The director and the woman from before were looking at the girl on the bed, laughing happily. And the photos on the wall behind them were even more horrifying. There is actually a young Qian Daohua, and various mutated children. All are created by their hands. The drawings were terrifying. It was the kindly director just now, holding money in one hand, and jungle juice in the other, laughing loudly. The scene shifted. The little girl from earlier was already lying on a hospital bed in the basement, just like a hero. Not long after, an aunt called the little girl away. They say she's moving somewhere else tomorrow. Before leaving, she even gave her a notebook to Shai-chan. Opened the notebook and took a look. The girl said these were the wings of a blue flash butterfly. Beautiful. But she likes dragonflies, because dragonflies can eat 200 bad mosquitoes a day. Kind and powerful. Whenever he stays here, he remembers those damn memories. At that moment, someone grabbed Shio-san's clothes. He turned around and found a little girl wanted to draw with him. The first drawing was of a little girl with butterfly wings. It's a miracle that Qian Daohua doesn't bully others. It turns out that when he was young, Qian Daohua's father was very harsh on him. He often hit him, and as a result, he went to jail. The dean also kindly asked Qian Daohua how he has been doing lately. Has he been bullied by anyone? I am very worried about him. He used to be a crybaby, and very fragile. Juan-hong, like Qian Daohua, grew up here. And Juan-hong is like a son to me, so I didn't refuse him. He just said one thing, to let me take care of you for a while before he left. The children here aren't afraid of Qian Daohua's tail at all. They even treat it as a toy, touching it all over. The irritable Qian Daohua surprisingly didn't lose his temper at the child. Instead, he scared him away. The director came over. It was Juan-hong who brought you here yesterday. When they came out, they found a lot of kids outside having a meal. It was bustling and lively. This is Bayou Garden, where Qian Daohua spent his childhood. It's very remote. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a door opening. When the door opened, it was a little girl. She came to call them for dinner. What's going on here? After getting up, they checked the room. I found the door was locked. The windows are also sealed very tightly. There's no way to get out. Even now, I can't believe that Lee Junhyun would kidnap him. And just his luck, the scorpion woman had just opened her eyes. In the dim room, the beautiful woman opposite him opened her eyes, and saw a boy next to her. So she gave him a big slap that she really liked. But they are still not as good as mine. In the dimly lit room, Shiokan opened his eyes. He turned to look beside him, and found that he was actually sleeping next to the scorpion woman. He injected the toxin into his neck. It was fast and almost invisible. The Spider-Man that fell to the ground seemed fine. But in fact, his arm was already fractured. So your powers are this impressive. He punched Spider-Man in the arm. The immense force sent Spider-Man flying. But his gaze suddenly became unfocused. Then, he crashed to the ground. It turned out Spider-Man had attacked at the same moment. I don't want to lose my current college life. Then I push off with my foot. A flash of lightning streaked across. His wings emitted a green glow. Shiokan further unleashed his superpower. Is she your girlfriend? If not, taking her away won't affect you at all. Scorpio Girl is a member of our group. No longer a member. Then the group project is finished. But when he turned around, he found the man had already caught up behind him. The Spider-Man was surprisingly able to match his flying speed on the ground. However, when he tried to ascend, he was blocked by the poison spear. Shiokan landed next to the scorpion woman. I want to wake her up, but it doesn't work. And grabbed him in one swift motion. I have to take you back with me. Shiokan did not surrender. He shook off his hand. He spread his wings and created distance, filling the sky with poisonous spears. The attack was so intense that Shio-san was forced back down. Seeing the danger, he tried to run back for reinforcements. But the man was very fast. He won't be coming back to school anymore. Shiokan guessed that he wasn't someone from the school. He angrily started to make a move. Shio-san spread his wings and fled to the sky. The man unleashed a barrage of poison attacks. These hairs can cause harm when they come into contact with the skin, and they are toxic. It turns out this man's ability is to release a large amount of toxic fluff. I took the scorpion woman away, and he doesn't belong here. That's called a crime, got it? Mind your own business. Then the man grabbed Shio-san's clothes and rolled away. He even threw a bunch of black hair everywhere. He was suddenly grabbed by another hand. It turned out to be Zhang Shio-san who had chased after him. What are you doing with the Scorpio girl? Are you her boyfriend? Don't talk nonsense, why are you touching her? The scene shifts. A man stands under a tree. He never expected to capture the scorpion woman so easily. He reached out his palm. Just as he was about to touch her. He's stealing my girl right in front of me. He's showing me no respect at all. Just then, Shokan catches a glimpse of the man's gaze. Something feels off. While a few people were enjoying the good times, a man walks up to the Scorpio woman and invites her for a drink. She wraps her arms around the man's arm. She looks sweet as she walks away with him. This really makes the blonde furious. It was this light that pulled him back. Just when he wanted to have a good talk with Shio-san. The pig teammate, Scorpion Girl, jumped out. After drinking, it felt even more like she should run away. It was more ridiculous than usual. Feeling shy and helpless, watching classmates celebrating wildly. There's nothing particularly special about this. I thought the opening ceremony at Insect University would have some flair. The cockroach girl quietly watches beside Shio-san. At the moment he was about to die, his expression became kinder. This class is really not bad. Since no one chose to skip class, today's lesson ends here. So, everyone happily held the opening ceremony. So let's wipe them out completely. Real combat is what I want. We absolutely can't lose to the transfer students. It's better than living like this forever. Professor Sure was watching the students' reactions. Of course. The more dangerous the class, the more credits you can earn. Then I have nothing to hesitate about. As they say, high risk, high reward. This kid's probably obsessed with being first in the whole department until the day he dies. I have a question to ask. If we fight against dangerous people, will that reflect in our grades? Upon hearing this, the classmates were shocked. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell into silence. Panic spread throughout the classroom. At that moment, sighing softly, you will officially face off against these dangerous creatures. You might be wondering if the previous group A met with the same fate as the two students who died. So you can give up this course now and leave the classroom immediately. So from now on, you must remember. The school is not a greenhouse and can't always protect you. You won't be sheltered forever. From now on, my class will focus on practical combat. Based on our current investigation, these people are mimicking chemical terror attacks, using jungle juice to induce mutations in ordinary people, also smuggling dangerous alien species and endangered species. Some of you were unknowingly forced to become victims of jungle juice. Right now, the school is also stuck in a deadlock over the recycling. This assignment is to show you all just how difficult it is to find a jungle juice. Do you know why? Because there's another faction of mutants targeting the jungle juice. Everyone was complaining. Jungle juice is already extinct. It's normal that you couldn't find it. I expected it. Then he turned on the screen. Is there anything worse than this tragic college assignment? The entire department is wiped out. You couldn't even find a single jungle juice when the professor announced the grades in class. Regarding the difficulty of the assignment, he heard that Tian Beeman was taken out by him, and another one perfectly blended into the first grade student circle. The keeper listened. Oh, really? Then let's do something interesting. And the one who told them the location of that fake warehouse was the mysterious person who knocked Shokan unconscious. At that moment, this person appeared in the laboratory. Beside him stood a man in a white coat. The man in the white robe said to the keeper that among those borrowed by the Shin family, "It's good that you're alive." In the hospital ward of the school city, Shokan saw the long-missing Huang Mao and the Scorpion Girl. He always thought they were in danger. It turned out they were just trapped under a fallen shelf in the warehouse for several hours. The cockroaches were unleashed. In a Thai style in the mood for love, a burst of light appeared. Cockroach Girl opened her eyes. Hyosen hugged her in pain. He tightly grasped Shokan's hand. Amidst everyone's astonished gazes, his entire skin split open, just like insects shed their old shells and become adults. But to grasp some small happiness from an unfortunate life, then you will gain. No matter how difficult it gets, you must struggle with all your might. These words helped him regain control of his body. But Kyosai slaps his hand away. He simply can't accept the reality. But the girl, lying in his arms, regains consciousness. She recalls what her brother once said, people who always feel unlucky will just keep being unlucky. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Professor Liu continued speaking. The medical team moves the body inside. A staff member walks over. He tries to comfort Kyosai, but Professor Liu's answer was no. It's already too late. Her heart has stopped beating for a while. My ability can only heal wounds. Unfortunately, it can't bring people back to life and enhance healing abilities. It's the most outstanding and mysterious ability in the entire school. In just a few words, the huge wound on Cockroach Girl's body has completely healed. Can Cockroach Girl survive? And the other half from the fungus that parasitizes the fireflies, which is also called cordyceps. And this cordyceps from the bat family is said to cure all diseases. Now it manifests as a superpower. It can restore energy. Then Professor Lu took off his gloves. He placed his hand above the wound of the Cockroach Girl. He used his abilities. Professor Lu had a very peculiar supernatural power. This ability came half from fireflies. Calm your temper. You broke the stretcher. How are we supposed to carry the injured? Then he turned to Shao Kahn and said, "Classmate, put him down." Angrily grabbing Shao Kahn, he shouted, "What happened? Speak clearly to me. We just asked you to find the insecticide. How did this result in a death?" At this moment, Professor Lu Huanying arrived. He was holding Cockroach Girl, crying out for someone to help me. Cockroach Girl, she's not breathing. In the rain, Shao Kahn stood at the entrance of the school city, holding Cockroach Girl. Professor Chi walked over briskly. "You can get even closer to the monster." After saying this, the mysterious person left. I don't know how much time has passed. The school staff found their way here. And Shao Kahn also woke up. We can't let him die. How can the prey turn around and eat the predator? I didn't expect that after getting close and adding salt, such a special individual would appear. I hope when we meet next time. Finally, Shao Kahn lifted Kyusunan with one hand. After a long roar, he was about to finish him off. But suddenly, with a thud, Shao Kahn, in a berserk state, was knocked unconscious by someone. It turns out this person is here to collect Chusona and others. Piece by piece, it was ripped apart. Pieces were thrown out one by one. Not enough hands. And using the mouth too. Parts of Kyusunan's indistinguishable body were thrown everywhere. He suddenly screamed in agony. The revenge of the humiliator began. His claws were thrown into the air. They were brutally torn off by the humiliator's hands. Then it was like dismantling building blocks. Shao Kahn brutally bites it off. Chusonan, pinned to the ground, looks shocked. What kind of power is this? This guy is completely different. I think I disturbed the wrong prey. A surprise attack from behind. But the rampaging Shao Kahn doesn't care about his little tricks. She turns and bites down directly. This isn't over yet. With a crunch. But at this moment, Susonan still had the strength to fight back. He grinned, "Pay attention to the back. Idiot." Using the advantage of his long arms, he twisted the pliers around. Shao Kahn grabbed his arm and swung it, throwing Susonan into the air. Then in one swift motion, grabbed his head, and slammed him straight to the ground, repeatedly murmuring to himself, "It's either you eat me, or I eat you." He completely felt no trace of humanity. Opposite him, Susonan also began to tremble all over. It can unleash the insect-like abilities within. This can exert powerful strength. In order to avenge the deceased cockroach sister, Shao Kahn abandoned all rationality. At this moment, he had only one thought. It turns out that Shao Tan learned techniques to stimulate insects from Professor Chi at school. Humans possess both the primal instincts of animals and the rationality to regulate them. However, if the balance is disrupted, and one lowers their rationality, leaning more towards instinct, Susonan, gritting his teeth in pain, fell to the ground. He immediately fought back, but the expected impact didn't come. Looking over, he found that Shao Kahn had caught his attack with just one hand. The immense force even prevented him from retracting his hand. He flashes in front of him, and throws a punch. A powerful shockwave erupts between them. Susonan shot toward the distance like a missile. This one directly broke through his defenses. Susonan is drooling. He's thinking, if I devour him in this state, what would happen? Excited, he extends his arms and launches an attack. But Xiaoshan, now rampaging, is moving at a speed countless times faster. This man's abilities began to spiral out of control due to his companion's death. He had already overused his powers before, and now unleashed an even greater force. His once ordinary wings now emitted a dazzling green light from the energy. And it poured out from his eyes as well. Meanwhile, the reckless man opposite him hadn't yet realized the gravity of the situation. That the target would actually be Shao Kahn. And this time, he used his body to block the attack directly. Su So smirked with confidence. Cockroach Girl might really be done for this time. I must find a way to attack. He remembered the scene where Cockroach Sister saved Shao Kahn just now. He turned around and charged at Shao Kahn to attack. At that moment, Shao Kahn couldn't move at all. Cockroach Sister never expected, although the man was mocking him fiercely. He was thinking to himself that having great strength was one thing, but being so fast as well made it impossible to hit him. I've been getting beaten unilaterally, but it healed immediately. The recovery ability is astonishingly strong. Susoman mocked after seeing this. So you're a cockroach, huh? No wonder I've always smelled a hint of poverty. With one punch, she can send the gigantic arm of the enhanced Kyosunan flying, along with a person. Each attack causes immense destruction. Not having gotten any information from Huang Mao and Scorpion Girl, she walks back to Shiotsan's side. The body of Kyosunan, who hit the wall, also hurt his hand. Ziyuan saw this, with a face full of shock. Is this what the pinnacle match is like? Although cockroaches have a bad reputation, the abilities that Cockroach Girl possesses are incredibly powerful. Shijin is completely unfazed. After striking a cool pose, a loud bang sounded the next second. A huge coin was directly hit back, and the coin seemed like it was about to crack. Before Shijin could explain, the insect man directly turned dark. He didn't expect the prey he thought was dead to actually come back to life. Then he reached out with his pincers to try to catch him. Facing the approaching threat, just as Ziyuan was about to have his neck clamped, a swift figure rushed past. In an instant, he dragged him away from danger. The support looked at the figure standing in front of him. He was completely stunned. At that moment, he suddenly remembered the professor's words. If he couldn't skillfully master the insect's abilities and abuse them, it could cause irreversible side effects. The insect man saw Ziyuan staring blankly, so he immediately reached out with his pincers towards Ziyuan. But just as he flew for a short while, there was a thud. He fell straight to the ground, as he tried to stand up, but he found that his wings were stiff and wouldn't move. After saying this, he flew in front of the insect man. Then he punched him hard. However, the attack still couldn't cause any damage. At this moment, he thought, it's time to use a bit of the insect powers I learned earlier from the professor. He even threatened to eat both him and Shijin later. Hearing this, Ziyuan could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He opened the pincers that were grabbing him with his bare hands. Then he angrily said, so you killed Shijin for this purpose? Eating other insects would make them stronger. For example, their bones would become harder. And the feeling of eating is even more enjoyable than going to a foot spa. He saw that Ziyuan was captivated, so he took the opportunity to reach out with his pincers and grab Ziyuan. He asked him if he had never eaten other insects. Otherwise, how could his attack be so low? Seeing Ziyuan's puzzled expression, he explained that, for carnivorous insects like them, then, he threw a heavy punch at his face. However, the insect man acted as if nothing happened, but Jiwon's hand started to throb with pain. He didn't expect the insect man's skin to be as tough as the cockroach man from before. The insect man saw the shock on Jiwon's face. Seeing Ziyuan rushing at him, he immediately extended his tentacles to grab him. But Jiwon, using his speed advantage, quickly dodged his probe and got right in front of him. Now he's been taken out by an ambush from the insect man. Seeing this, Ziyuan flew into a rage and charged at the insect man. As a maggot-like insect man, he could use his huge tentacles to hunt. He was so scared that he kept screaming. He even fell over while standing. At that moment, he suddenly saw the jungle juice insecticide he had just bought yesterday, so he immediately grabbed it. Then he sprayed those cockroaches like crazy. His classmates learned that his brother had died. They immediately formed a team to prank him. That day, they brought a box of cockroaches. Then they poured all the cockroaches into his house through the window. Watching a swarm of cockroaches crawl towards him didn't last long. His brother worked 3 jobs a day to help him save enough for college. This ultimately led to his death from overwork. After losing his only relative, it felt as if the whole world had collapsed. The only light in his life was ultimately taken away by poverty. As a result, his screams would often echo through the house. Fortunately, his brother was a protective maniac. Even when he was asleep, he would also get up to deal with the bugs. Unfortunately, the good times. He also warned them not to harass his sister. Under his brother's protection, those people no longer dared to act recklessly near his home. However, due to living in a filthy basement, there were always various bugs coming and going in his home. Even her classmates took pictures of her living conditions in the slum and posted them online for entertainment. Just as the boy was about to press the shutter on his phone, the girl's brother happened to return and saw it. Then he kicked him away with one kick. Ziyuan felt utterly distraught. In the next moment, he turned into a beast-driven mad. He clenched his fist and rushed towards the insect man. The girl is a high school student living in a slum. As a result, she is often ostracized and ridiculed by her classmates. He was ambushed and stabbed. An insect-like creature with pincers grinned maliciously. "Prey, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Seeing Shijin lying on the ground bleeding profusely, they carefully walked into the warehouse and began their inspection. Before long, the aide found the jungle juice. He asked Shijin to come and see if it was real. However, Shijin had only just taken 2 steps towards him. A snapping sound echoed. The jungle juice had basically been fully reclaimed. It's impossible for a large group to appear out of nowhere. The words of the aide resonate deeply within him. He didn't know how long it had been. By the time they arrived there, it was already evening. Just as he was about to take the call, the other side hung up. And no matter how he tried, he couldn't get through. That's when Shijin told him this was very likely a trap. Fei Xing excitedly told him that they had found a lot of jungle juice in a warehouse. He urged them to hurry over. Ji Yuanwen felt a surge of joy in his heart. However, Shijin was full of doubt. Feeling helpless, they had no choice but to ask passers-by on the street if they had seen that thing. But they had no luck. After some fiddling around, the two of them sat on a chair inside. After a while, the volunteer's phone suddenly rang. He didn't pay attention to that. Instead, he went straight to where he had stored the jungle juice. Unfortunately, that bottle was missing. Refusing to believe it, he searched his house again but still couldn't find it. Ziyuan grabbed his little hand and walked while saying, Shijin, trust me, I know a place where we can find jungle juice. Not long after, they arrived at a building. At that moment, Ziyuan excitedly opened his front door. But he found that his home seemed to have been ransacked. Where are we supposed to find it now? Ziyuan showed a proud expression and said, great. A perfect score is in hand. Being first in the whole department is also just around the corner. Before Shijin could ask him what was wrong with him, they decided to split up. To improve efficiency, Ziyuan and Shijin were together, while Comet and Daohua were together. After a while, Shijin complained that the jungle juice had basically all been collected. Once this was said, the classmates in the classroom became restless. Meanwhile, Ziyuan fell into deep thought. Among them, Ziyuan, Shijin, Comet, and Daohua were grouped together. As soon as they stepped outside the school, the professor smiled broadly, showing his courage. You actually dare to make a deal with me here. The professor arranged group assignments to go off campus and collect jungle juice insecticides that can turn normal people into insect people. As long as one group finds one, then all members of that group can receive full marks this time. And he asked him to keep tonight's secret. The volunteer, holding his chest, said that he could help keep tonight's secret, but as a condition for exchange, you have to teach me the abilities, because I want to become stronger. As he was leaving, he said with a playful tone that when he comes back next time, he will take all of you down. Not a single one will be left. As soon as he left, several insect people followed behind him. At this moment, Professor Chi asked the hidden volunteer to come out. A voice made them stop. After Professor Ma advised them to stop, he quietly told Professor Shi to let him go and then follow him. This way, they could uncover the more dangerous organization behind him, the insect woman. He asked him why he did it. However, the insect girl had no intention of telling him. The professor knew that using words wouldn't work, so he thought of using force to bring him back. After a fierce collision. So even though I knew he was the priority, I didn't deal with it. Just to have a chat with you. And everything that happened here was completely witnessed by that sneaky Ziyuan. After exchanging a few pleasantries with the professor, at that moment, he tightly grasped Comet's neck. After a short while, a sound erupted that sent him flying. And the person who appeared was the professor. I knew you would show up again, thus destroying the things I was trying to protect. He saw the purple spots on his neck glowing. Before long, he arrived at the small grove. What he didn't know was that he was being controlled by the toxin injected by the insect woman, which often acted against the wind. And the insect woman's purpose was naturally to deal with him. But the insect woman managed to escape. That night, he recalled the powers the professor had told him about. He fell asleep next to the comet. He didn't know how much time had passed. Suddenly, the comet sat up. He felt as if he had discovered a new world. The professor turned to look at him, and told him that if he didn't want to suffer side effects from using abilities like him, he quickly turned the insect's powers into his own. Thus, Ziyuan and the others captured the mantis man. After the sound of the explosion, the professor stood still, a striking figure. Meanwhile, the mantis man lay on the ground, laughing and fainting. At this moment, the professor calmly stated that this is the true power of insect abilities. Ziyuan was stunned by his words. Explode in response to the attack from the mantis man. He shows no fear at all. In the next moment, a loud noise left Ziyuan stunned. This is just too powerful. What he didn't know was that the professor, as a scarab beetle, possessed a magical ability. He can produce high-temperature chemicals through chemical reactions in his body. When battling his enemies, he can release these high-temperature chemicals too. At that moment, the professor's arm suddenly began to smoke and sparkle. Facing the praying mantis man charging at him, he swung his sturdy arm heavily at him. Qi Yuan was also puzzled. Why was his arm smoking? And he was just a newly enrolled transfer student. It seems this person is worth me giving a demonstration for. Seeing this, the mantis man shook his body, and immediately charged toward the professor. You can all go die during this period. Weren't you injured? At this moment, the professor told him not to worry. He has already been cured by the academy staff. What he didn't expect was that Ji Yuan and the others could actually beat their archenemy like this. But he was ambushed and got a cut on his kidney. Now he's making a strong comeback. What kind of sparks will fly when he faces his enemies? Ji Yuan was shocked to see him here and said, "Professor, why are you here?" The Mantis Man was directly knocked away. What a useless guy. Just now, he charged out with such bravado. How did things become so desperate? The man is the top martial arts instructor. Finally, I can eat you now. Caught, Ji Yuan wants to struggle, but he can't break free. At that moment, when the Mantis Man opened his huge maw to swallow him, a bang sounded. After saying that, he tried to kick the mantis, but a sharp forelimb suddenly appeared in front of him. The next second, the mantis pinned him to the ground. Ji Yuan saw this and tried to save him, but was caught by the mantis right away. What he didn't expect was, the chainsaw was smashed to pieces with one strike. Just as I was about to be smashed, the mantis appeared behind the comet. How could we possibly lose to a cripple with only half an arm? I want you all dead. After saying this, he charged at Ji Yuan. At this moment, Ji Yuan tried to start the chainsaw, but he found it had no power, so he immediately used it to block. Then, with his remaining forelimb, he wildly slashed around, trying to vent the pain of losing his arm. Ji Yuan and the others quickly retreated upon seeing this. At that moment, the Mantis Man, enraged, shouted, "You two brats! You dare to plot against me!" After Ji Yuan jumped up to catch it, he quickly flew towards the praying Mantis Man with the chainsaw. The Mantis Man's face turned extremely dark upon seeing this. With a sharp crack, one of his forelimbs was chopped off. At that moment, he screamed in pain, "I am at the top of the food chain. How can mere flying insects defeat me?" Uncertain how much time had passed, the comet finally arrived. He threw the big treasure in his hand towards Ji Yuan. Ji Yuan delivered a hard kick to his chin, but a slight smirk appeared at the corner of his mouth. It didn't hurt that much. Ji Yuan covered his tingling and trembling feet. At that moment, the praying Mantis Man swung his sharp forelimbs at him. Right after that, he was tied to a tree by Ji Yuan. The Mantis Man was dumbfounded. What method did he use? How could he be so fast? Before he could react, let's just say you successfully hit me once. Meanwhile, the Mantis Man, relying on his keen sense of smell, was searching for Ji Yuan step by step. Suddenly, he was startled. In the next moment, Ji Yuan appeared behind the insect woman holding a vine. Meanwhile, when Shizhen was stopping the professor's bleeding, a whoosh sound came. Distracted him. Was something flying by just now? At that moment, the professor grinned and actually snatched my things right under my nose. He was almost shocked. He thought Ji Yuan had lost his mind. But after Ji Yuan whispered a few words in his ear, although he was reluctant, he still agreed to help. Could jump dozens of times his body length with each leap. At this point, the mantis person was still not giving up, insisting on chasing them. Before long, Comet and the others arrived at a hidden place. When the Comet heard that Ji Yuan was going back to catch the mantis person, the next second, they were far away from the battlefield. At this moment, the mantis person was full of questions. How did he suddenly run so far? What they didn't know was, that Comet, as a grasshopper insect person, his heart was full of doubt. Why was Ji Yuan able to sacrifice himself for others without hesitation? At that moment, just as Ji Yuan was about to be crushed by the Mantis Man, Huiseng suddenly grabbed him by the back of his collar. At that moment, Ji Yuan told him to run quickly. He stayed behind to hold him back. Comet didn't expect that he would save himself. He was even willing to risk his life. As he watched Ji Yuan fight an unbeatable enemy, he was still in a paralyzed state. He watched as the poisonous spike stabbed towards him. His body couldn't move at all. Just when he was about to be crushed, Ji Yuan flew in front of him and saved him. At that moment, he suddenly opened his eyes wide, and realized it was Ji Yuan calling him. The insect woman, seeing her prey awake, immediately wanted to take him away. Comet, who was forcefully awakened. What should I do? Am I going to die here? Just as he was about to be overpowered, a loud noise echoed through the sky. As Comet was slipping into unconsciousness, he seemed to hear someone calling out to him, "But you came to me yourself, so I won't hold back." Ji Yuan looked at the monster in front of him. He knew he definitely couldn't win now, so he focused on defending himself. However, his hand hurt so much that it instinctively pulled back. Its skin is so tough. Just as he began to doubt himself, the mantis creature suddenly appeared in front of him. I was planning to leave directly. At that moment, he rushed straight toward them. The mantis creature immediately swung its sharp forelimbs at him. With his advantage in agility and speed, Ji Yuan dodged most of the attacks. Before long, he finally found an opportunity to strike. He then slammed his fist hard into the mantis creature's jaw. Even now, he still doesn't understand why I taught him to run away first instead of fighting, especially since a mantis could never defeat a dragonfly, its natural predator. At the same time, Ji Yuan was flying and thinking, it's all my fault for freezing up in fear. That's why I watched helplessly as Comet got captured. After a while, he spotted their tracks. After saying that, he flew away quickly. The professor tried to stop him, but he was already far away. At this moment, when He-jin was bandaging the professor's wound, the professor thought, what a foolish guy. You have to follow the rules. Just then, Ziyuan suddenly appeared above them. I lost a bet, and now I've dropped out. So school rules no longer concern me. If we keep delaying, more will collapse. Before he finished speaking, the professor interrupted him. Rules are rules. As long as you're a student of this school, the school has rules. You can't fight with outsiders privately. Leave the rest to the school. Shishin angrily shouted. Why care about that now? Professor, please take care of yourself. We'll meet again next time. Shishin saw that the comet was being taken away. She wanted to save him, but she was stopped by the professor. The comet constellation is already enough for now. They have another mission later. Although the mantis man was reluctant, he still shouldered the comet and went with him. Before leaving, the insect girl suddenly took off her mask. She wondered how he, being imprisoned, could end up here. And compared to before, he clearly looks like a beast that has regained its strength after consuming prey. Just then, the insect woman told the mantis man to stop. Ziyuan stared at this sudden scene. He was completely stunned. The familiar sense of helplessness and fear left him at a loss. Shishin looked at the cockroach man and gasped. Her whole body was trembling. He slowly passed out. Shishin wanted to save him, but unfortunately, he was in the enemy's hands. At that moment, the insect woman touched his face and said, not bad. This person is suitable to be a snack. Bastard, stop it. Just as his fist was about to hit the insect woman, unexpectedly, the insect woman put her stinger in front of her. The next second, the yellow-haired comet crashed into it himself. As a wave of dizziness hit him, we meet again. A female insect wearing a mask suddenly appeared. In the next second, she smashed the female classmate's head with her tail. Seeing this, Huang Mao angrily stepped forward to stop her. He fell into deep thought. Just then, the professor was suddenly stabbed in the back. Ziyuan and the others were so shocked that they couldn't speak. GGG. Resisting the fear of insects. Fear restricts you. If you want to conquer me, you have to accept the fact that you are an insect. Ziyuan frowned. As fellow insect people, do you know why you can't defeat me? You are young and have no disadvantages. In theory, you could completely overpower me. Ziyuan looked at him dumbfounded. Ji-won suddenly grabbed the professor's collar. Just as he was about to confront the professor, he was suddenly taken down by the professor with a swift move. He couldn't move at all. This scared the two girls, making them tremble, but the results were the same. This made the expressions of Huang Mao and the others grow serious. If this continues, will he really get expelled? No one knew how much time had passed. This is way too easy. Just as he was about to touch the professor sidestepped and dodged. This left him swinging at air. Then he launched continuous attacks on the professor. Just drop out. After saying that, he thought to himself, it's time for you to realize your own strength. Ziyuan immediately charged at him. Isn't it just a touch? I'll give you a chance. If you can find me within an hour, I'll let them go. And I'll let all of you pass. If you fail, the professor said with a dark expression. Excessive. This would be unacceptable in real combat. They've been dead for a long time. You want to be a hero, right? All right. However, the professor did not hesitate. He swung directly at them. At that moment, the intelligent ape suddenly appeared to block him. Is this really necessary? I told you in real combat, if you don't run, you'll die. What are you standing there for? You'll really die. With that, the professor raised the chainsaw in his hand. The two women were so scared that they covered their heads. At that moment, a girl suddenly fell to the ground. And the professor was chasing after them with a chainsaw, forcing them to run. The professor shouted loudly, but, Xiao Mei. She twisted her ankle. It's been running away for a whole hour. The support is complaining while catching its breath. Just then, the blonde suddenly made a promotion gesture. Shoo, it's coming. Meanwhile, the mantis man was sniffing the air back and forth. The woman asked in confusion, what are you doing? At that moment, drool was dripping down from the mantis man's mouth. I smell it, I smell it. It's that damn dragonfly from back then. After speaking, he threw the stuff from his foot at the professor. He actually threw dirt at his elder. Does he have no sense of propriety? The next second, smoke suddenly started to spread around him. Seeing this, the blonde guys quickly took the chance to escape. The guy with yellow hair seized the moment. Hearing this, he quickly ran toward the professor. Just as the professor was about to strike at him, he dodged by sliding past. Professor, please put on a face mask. Whoosh! Shishin directly hugged him and flew over. Wake up. If you get caught, you'll fail. After saying that, he shouted at the guy with yellow hair. Thinking of the monster, he suddenly remembered Mei Shi's terrified expression when she saw him. He actually spaced out. What a useless guy. With a grim face, the professor was ready to catch Ziyuan. Could he be predicting the chainsaw's trajectory? After saying that, he swung the axe at Ziyuan. This professor was like a monster, showing no mercy at all, more like a monster that wants to kill. The chainsaw suddenly swung towards him. Just as the chainsaw was 2.5 centimeters away from him, Ziyuan suddenly dragged him back quickly. The professor trembled slightly upon seeing this. That was the dragonfly's pretense. Is this a test? This is murder. Moments later, the professor was chasing and attacking Huang Mao. How is this old man so fast? Before he could finish speaking, but you could die. The hide-and-seek test starts now. Anyone caught will fail. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately chased after the crowd. Ji Yuan shouted while running, "What the hell is going on? He's so handsome." This handheld chainsaw combat professor is actually chasing students with a chainsaw. I mentioned there would be a simple test today. It's not too hard. If a person is even worse than a bug, then it has no meaning at all. Shijin was taken aback by his words, staring at him blankly, her eyes wide open in shock. After saying that, he threw the man by the rice field heavily onto the ground. He couldn't move at all. The student ID in his hand was tightly gripped by him. No matter how much you want the new Rila medication, you can't do this. Just as the man by the rice field was about to stab Shijin from behind, he was suddenly yanked up by Ji Yuan's blanket. Then Ji Yuan dragged him toward the shore. This is no longer your territory. It's my territory now. Just then, he was suddenly knocked away by Shijin's elbow. At this moment, the man from the field suddenly appeared in front of Shijin. He shouted, "I'm going to kill you." Shijin realized the situation was bad. Is he really that strong in the water? Just then, the lake behind Shijin suddenly bubbled. In the next second, he was ambushed by a little gaggle. "Boss, I caught him." Ziyuan's fist landed heavily on his chin. However, he acted as if nothing had happened. He immediately lunged at Ziyuan with the dagger. While escaping, Ziyuan thought to himself, "Damn it, I couldn't even hurt him." He pretended to grab the student ID with his left hand, but his right fist was already poised to strike. Yet Tianbian sneered disdainfully, "You won't be able to get a student ID." The next second, however, Ji Yuan was effortlessly dancing around under his betrayal. This guy, Tianbian, was so angry he gritted his teeth. What kind of insect is this kid? He's flying so skillfully. At this moment, Ji Yuan flew towards him again. He wanted to get his student ID back, but he was still noticed. Tianbian Nan dodged and immediately aimed a backstab at Ji Yuan. "Since you've come to my territory, I'll send you to hell." Tanabe saw this, and his face instantly turned pitch black. "Damn it, here comes someone to ruin my plans again." Ji Yuan saw an opportunity, and quickly rushed towards Tianbian Nan. The whirlwind kick, the invisible show-off kick, completely terrified those little punks. They couldn't move at all. As an insect, a grasshopper, his leg strength is absolutely formidable. "You bastards, I'm here to take back my student ID. It's something that involves all of us." Shijin looked at him blankly, not knowing what to say. In the next moment, the yellow-haired boy, whose nose was pressed against the wound, suddenly appeared behind the little GAGA on the shore. Then the right leg at the speed of light. "Their target is me. You don't need to get involved. Go back." However, Ji Yuan's lips curled up slightly. "You don't have to bear it alone. This isn't just your matter." Tianbian Nan Wanin immediately took out his student ID. "I have the student ID here. If you want to leave, then go." The fools, Shijin, saw this. Their faces turned gloomy, and dodged it. "Fool. You're not even on the same level as him. Plus, he's the strongest aquatic insect, the giant water bug. You have no hope in the water. So if you don't want to die, leave immediately." Shijin frantically reminded him. "No, get out of the way." But the giant water bug man grinned. Just as he was about to backstab G1, G1 swiftly retreated. Luckily, G1 managed to dodge it by a hair. Speaking of which, his movements aren't that fast either. "Even I can handle an opponent like this." Before he could finish the sentence, seeing this, she grinned. "Yay, it's you, you little bug. You took a punch from me and you're still jumping around?" Right after saying that, he threw an uppercut at G1. But she is being held down in the water by a muscular guy. She can't move at all. Just when she was about to suffocate underwater, a figure quickly darted across the surface of the water. The next second, the muscular guy was sent flying. The big guy's lackeys were stunned in place. When did they arrive? And Shijin had a face full of shock. So fast, really so fast. This girl is the top fighter in the whole school. Whoosh! A figure swiftly flew across the water. The next second, the big guy was punched by the reinforcements. "You garbage. I will never let you go. In the water, I'm invincible as a water boatman. It must hurt to be without you. The top spot in the whole series is mine now. I don't know how long it's been." Just when Shijin was about to suffocate in the water, just as he was about to catch him, The big guy punched him down into the water. Then he stabbed at him with the claws on his back. Fortunately, Shijin caught it with both hands. As the strongest aquatic insect predator, the big guy saw this and ripped off the student ID around his neck. A bunch of idiots. How can you catch him on land? Hey, representative, I'm going to throw him down. Shijin saw this and immediately flew over. So you still came after all, said the first-place student of the first semester. After Shijin finished speaking, his lackeys charged at Shijin, but Shijin easily knocked them all out. And how could so many student IDs be processed in one day? Jaiwan was dumbfounded after hearing this. Could it be that on the other side of the Sijin Tower? When Shijin arrived at the lakeside alone, the little thugs immediately surrounded him. Blonde gritted his teeth and said, "Idiot, did you really believe that? Naren's goal is to be the top of the department. So why would he stop all the students from attending class? Wouldn't it be enough to stop just the few who could be number one, and knows how to take care of people?" Just then, the blonde guy next to him suddenly woke up. He immediately asked Ji Yuan what had just happened. After Ji Yuan told him about it, "I'll be back soon." He left right after he finished speaking. Ji Yuan watched his departing figure. He muttered, "Truly worthy of being the department representative." Calm and composed, he found himself lying in the infirmary, and his student ID had been taken. As the class representative, Shijin said to him when he woke up, "Don't worry. I'll go get your student ID replaced right now." After saying that, he swung his fist at the big guy. Just as he was about to hit the big guy, there was a loud clang. His neighbor's little brother hit Ziyuan on the head. When he woke up, he had just finished speaking, when a group of people with pipes rushed in at the door. Then they threatened them to hand over their student IDs. Seeing this, Ziyuan could no longer suppress the anger in his heart towards these bastards. He couldn't move at all. "Friends, I have a request. Can you give me the top spot in the entire department? Please hand over your student IDs to me. From now on, only I can attend this class." Poof, just a transfer student. He just finished speaking, and felt a chilling sensation on his back. The next second, his head was directly welded to the table. All the students looked at him. The dragonfly man from the movie incident. He actually takes the same course as us. Ji Yuan didn't expect to be this famous. At this moment, a blonde guy scoffed. Fortunately, he made it in time. Even though it's not Professor Ma's class, at least he managed to enroll. Before long, he received a notification for the upcoming class. When he arrived in class, the course selection started immediately. With the final case coming to a close, the practical insect fighting course has completed registration. Seeing that the registration was complete, his body instantly slumped in the chair. Time is running out. I need to hurry. Not sure how long he flew. He finally arrived at the classroom. Then he plugged in the USB drive at light speed. When he opened it and looked, it was a USB drive. Could that person have known what he just said? There are 5 minutes left until the end. He immediately spread his wings and flew back. "If you have nothing to do, help me throw this away." Holding the bag, he felt a wave of melancholy. "It's over, everything's over." As he spoke, he crushed the bag in his hand. Then he suddenly noticed there seemed to be something in the bag. Ji-won, awakened, suddenly sat up. "How long was I asleep?" Seeing him awake, Professor Sher turned and walked away. 5 minutes until course selection. After saying that, he tossed the bag of spicy sticks to him. Just when he thought he was out of danger, the pot lid guy stabbed a poison needle into his forehead, and took the USB drive from his hand. When Ji-won, paralyzed by the poison needle, fell into a deep sleep, Professor Sher walked over, eating spicy sticks, and said, "Get up." The next moment, he fell heavily to the ground. "I can't be dying here, can I? A selected guest actually made me suffer like this." This boy was being chased by a group of insect people. Fortunately, the pot lid guy saved him. "I can't just stand by and do nothing." After saying that, he tossed pot lid man onto a tree branch. Then he continued chasing the person who had stolen the USB drive. But after flying for a bit, he suddenly felt weak all over. "What should I do? If this goes on, I won't be able to get the USB drive." No, absolutely not. Just as pot lid man's head was about to kiss the emperor, a figure suddenly grabbed him. Even so, Ziyuan saw this and just wanted to chase. But he noticed that the pot lid guy he just punched was about to fall to the ground. What's going on? Is he that weak against punches? Falling from this height could be deadly. At that moment, the USB was suddenly snatched by someone else. Ji-won was almost furious at the sight. The person who got the USB just grinned. "Ha, it's turned upside down." Then immediately ran away. His body also fell down together. Ji-won saw the USB falling. He immediately flew towards it. Just as he was about to grab it, "Give me the USB." In no time, it comes to the back of the pot lid man. The pot lid man is stunned, thinking, this is impossible. With a loud slap, he gets hit hard with a punch. The next second, the USB drive in the pot-lid man's hand falls to the ground. Its enormous compound eyes consist of tens of thousands of hexagonal facets. They can capture the slightest movements of prey from every angle, 360 degrees with no blind spots. It can even predict the prey's movement route. At this moment, the hunting genes of the young ape are instantly awakened. It completely forgets the paralysis in its body. I can actually see his flight path. What he doesn't know is, the dragonfly is known as the king of predators. It has a hunting success rate of up to 95%. The secret to its success lies in its eyes. Damn it! I can't stop. Just then, his eyes suddenly emitted a green glow. What's going on? Then, despite the numbness throughout his body, he directly chased after him. The pot-lid guy stuck his tongue out at him, calling him an idiot. He was poisoned but still wanted to catch up with me. Watching the pot-lid guy get further away from him, he felt a surge of unwillingness in his heart. After saying that, he flew out. Seeing this, Ziyuan turned pale to the extreme, unable to handle it. This won't do. After saying that, he pulled out the poison needle from his forehead. He said playfully, "What's wrong? Did you really think I was helping you? What a fool. I can't believe you would trust a competitor. Don't forget, only the strong can survive here. After poisoning, your whole body will become paralyzed. You probably won't be able to move for a while. By the way, you are quite impressive. You actually got the USB drive." Seeing Ziyuan's incredulous expression, he leaned in closer. Caught off guard, Ziyuan instantly collapsed to the ground, unable to move at all. The pot-lid man saw this, and proudly declared that the needle was filled with bee venom. "You say I'm kind. What is that?" That nonsense hadn't even been said. With a loud bang, he directly injected a needle into Ziyuan's forehead. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. "This time, I really owe it to you. You've helped me once again. I'm so lucky to have met someone as kind as you." The praised pot-lid guy shyly lowered his head. A voice called out to him, "Come here, into the tree hole. Hurry!" When Ziyuan saw it was the boy who had helped him before, he immediately flew over to hide with him. After everyone who was chasing him left, others also joined the struggle. Fortunately, as a person of integrity, his reflexes were quick enough to dance under their sharp blades. Damn those selectors. He never expected that choosing Kujin would lead to being hunted by so many people. He didn't know how long he had been fleeing, so they were willing to smash me just to grab the USB drive. How despicable. As he realized he was about to be caught, he instantly spread his wings. Then, with a spiral maneuver, he slid past them. At the same time, someone hiding in the shadows saw him running towards them. They immediately extended their giant claw and threatened, "Be obedient. Hand over the USB drive." Upon hearing this, Ziyuan straightened up. But in the next second, an insect man stabbed him from behind. Luckily, he reacted in time and dodged. The insect man, failing to ambush him, launched another attack. Uncertain of the reason, Ziyuan fled while wondering why this was happening. The boy actually grew wings on his back to obtain the medicine to turn back into a normal person. He transferred to Jungle University. During the course selection competition, he was ecstatic after getting the course selection USB. When everyone saw this message, their hearts immediately started racing. The hunt is finally about to begin. He has no idea what's going to happen next. Little does Ziyuan know that countless eyes are watching him from behind. He finished speaking and pressed the button on his phone. The next second, the phone for backup rang. When he looked at it, he found that it had details about all the targets who received the USB drives from Mr. Ma. Even the kill couldn't be stopped. Just like that, he got the last USB drive from Professor Ma. That was close. This is actually the last one. Now that the USB drives have been distributed, that should be the professor's hiding place. So he quickly flew toward it. Because he was flying too fast, he unexpectedly made a kill upon landing. The dragonfly man really flies fast. He scratched his head. Looking around, he flew up high to observe. As a dragonfly, he flies higher than others. Before long, he saw many people flying towards the same mountaintop. It's over, it's over. At this point, the USB drives have probably all been snatched. So, he hurriedly said goodbye to the pot-lid guy. That kid is pretty good. He even took the initiative to tell me these things. If you don't mind, let me explain. So, the guy with the pot lid on his head explained to G1 as they walk south. Only the first 16 people who find the hidden professor on the mountain can get the USB drive. Only then can they plug it into the computer to select their courses. G1 became extremely anxious after hearing this. Where are they all going? Confused, he walked to the window to check what was happening. A boy with a bowl cut walked into the classroom. Are you the transfer student? You probably haven't had the chance to ask about course selection yet, right? After all, registering for courses requires more speed than rushing to grab a spot in the cafeteria after class. 32 The time is up. The students scrambled to fly out of the window. Ji-Yuan was stunned by the sight. Isn't everyone supposed to be choosing courses? And the corner of his mouth slightly curls up. Who knows? There are only a few seconds left before course registration. Ji Yuan is nervously waiting, hoping he can successfully enroll in Professor Ma's class. I heard there's a new transfer student. Yeah, you must be talking about Ji Yuan. Do you think he can successfully choose his courses? Professor sure hears this. It's surprising that students have to gather together to choose courses. That's really strange. Ji Yuan is puzzled by the school's bizarre course selection in the computer room. On the other side, Professor Ma is enjoying the scenery when Professor Sure walks into his office. Next, you need to choose one of these 3 electives to qualify for graduation. After Ji-won took He-jin's notebook, he decided to take Professor Ma's class, because it was the easiest elective to get a high grade in. Speaking of which, and finally decided to enroll. He also prepared to compete for the top graduation score. After all, as a former top student, he still had some confidence. In no time, He-jin helped him complete the transfer student process. Listen, I've already arranged your required courses. As long as you take the Cinderella drug, you can instantly turn back into a normal person. But this drug is only given to the top graduate of the school. On the way back, Ji-won thought for a long time. I already understand your situation from the report. Next, I will tell you how to return to being a normal person. After saying this, Professor Ma pressed the remote button in his hand. Later, Ji-yuan learned through Professor Ma's video. He found out that he was stunned. There are actually so many insect people like me here. Can I really find a way to become a normal person again here? Before long, they arrived at Professor Ma's research institute. Ji-yuan became afraid and distanced herself. After learning he was a monster. In order to live a normal life like everyone else, he was taken by a girl to Insect University. Seeing all kinds of insect people singing and dancing here, he gritted his teeth and said, so how can I turn back into my old self? Unexpectedly, the boy had grown wings on his back. This instantly turned him, who was popular at school, into a monster in the eyes of his classmates. Even the girl who used to care deeply for him. Does he really have a way to change me back? And he actually has tentacles. Could it be that he is like me? At this moment, the girl suggested that they go inside the building to discuss further. Once inside, Ji-yuan leaned against the wall. A person with wings choosing to jump off a building to commit suicide. Don't you think that's a bit stupid? Do you really hate having wings that much? Do you want to know how to turn back into an ordinary person? When Yan Ziyuan was so shocked his eyes sparkled. What's up with this woman? When did she show up here? And she can even stand on the wall. Just as he was puzzled, the girl adjusted her hat. But halfway down, he suddenly hovered in the air with these damn wings. Can't even let me do as I please, even in death? Just then, a graceful girl suddenly appeared in front of him. Why am I so useless? Rather than living in such agony, I might as well jump and end it all. As his foot stepped down, his body plummeted straight down. The root cause of all this is these wings. Thinking of this, he wanted to get rid of the wings, but I still couldn't bring myself to do it. It's already come to this, and yet, I'm still afraid of pain. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji-yuan was thrown outside by his relatives. That kind Meishi, the one who worries about me more than anyone else, actually abandoned me too, and asked him what happened, but was stopped by his relative. Don't come looking for me again. You monster. Meishi trembled while speaking. Little did he know that as soon as Messi saw him, immediately scared, the screaming continued. Don't come over. Ji-yuan, confused, wanted to approach. Others ignore me. What does it matter to me? At least I still have Messi. He will definitely care about me. So he came to the hospital to visit Messi. Wherever Ji-yuan walked on campus, he could hear people talking about him. It felt like the feeling of being isolated when he was a child. That day, while he was online, he suddenly learned that Messi, who had fainted and been hospitalized, had woken up. Right. Since then, the video of him revealing his wings and saving Messi spread throughout the school. Everyone started treating him like a monster. Even the friends who used to play with him began looking at him differently and kept their distance. Some even tried to secretly lift his shirt to see if he was really a monster like in the video. The boy sprayed the insect with insecticide. The next second, insect wings grew from his back. To save the girl he liked, Meishi, he jumped off the building and caught her. And in front of everyone, he revealed his wings. I might lose the wonderful life I have now. But just as I was about to fall to the ground, a beam of light appeared on his back. The next second, he revealed his wings in front of everyone. The cockroach man was stunned. What, this is possible too? The cockroach man scoffed disdainfully, calling me a fool. Even if an insect man jumped from here, he would die. I looked down at the crowd below. I thought to myself, if I spread my wings now, it would be like exposing my weakness. My life will come to an end here. He couldn't help but bite his lip tightly. I'm sorry, Meishi. In the next moment, he jumped down. I don't know how long it has been, but I finally held him tight. At this rate, Macy will die. What should I do? Should I spread my wings to save him? But I haven't flown even once. What's more important is, if I reveal my wings under so many people's gaze. So she came looking for him. The cockroach man was very annoyed at being interrupted while eating. The next second, he rushed toward Macy at an incredible speed. Then she was thrown off the building. At that moment, Ji-won rushed to the window in panic. No, no! He split the cola can in half. Meanwhile, Ji-won fell to the ground. It was then that he shockingly realized who had thrown the cola can. It's Macy. Macy nervously explained that she had just come out of the bathroom and didn't see him. I wonder what other insects would taste like if caught. After saying that, he waved towards Ji-won again. Just as he was about to smash Ji-won, a can of cola suddenly hit him in the face. With a clang. Haven't you also reacted this way when you first saw another insect person? That damned insecticide. Ji-won remembered that it was after he used that can of insecticide that he got wings and jungle juice. That's right, it was the one that was going to turn me into a carnivorous insect. Like me, a carnivorous insect. Shivering in fear. How is this possible? His hands have grown into weapons like cockroach arms. The cockroach unit member was quite scared. He questioned, why do you look like you've seen a monster? With that said, it flew toward him. Then it slashed at him several times rapidly. But none of the strikes hit him. After all, it could still have some fun before feeding. The fallen support stared at the monster in front of him. But Macy is still in the bathroom. At that moment, the cockroach man saw him. And couldn't help drooling at the mouth. Found you. My food. They all fled in panic. Ji-won was trembling with fear. Cold sweat streaming down. Too dangerous. I have to escape quickly too. A security guard suddenly rushed in. He shouted, hurry. Before he could finish saying evacuate, a cockroach man with hands like a cockroach instantly pierced through his body. The crowd screamed in horror. While Ji-won was watching the movie alone, suddenly, with a snap, the power in the cinema went out. This caused widespread panic. Just then, it was just a little uncomfortable. After hiding his wings, he regained his confidence. Even the girl he liked, Mickey, started getting close to him. That day, when they were watching a movie in the cinema, Mickey drank too much soda and went to the restroom. The next moment, wings of the pests grew on his back. Because of this, he was so frightened that others would see him as a monster. He was even more afraid of being captured for dissection and research. But later he discovered that he could fold the wings up and bandage them on a cicada. Then others wouldn't be able to tell. How could he have time to lift the slave seal? Clay did not explain this to him. Karato only needs to know that a brand new kingdom is about to be born. This boy sprayed pests with insecticide. They will return sooner or later, Clay calmly stated. They have to defeat the berserker and the other races first. Karato is in disbelief, because he has been monitoring Clay, awaiting further instructions. As soon as Clea finished speaking, Joe rushed in with a large group of knights. Even though they were captured, Karata continues to boast that he has a large army. Karatu, with his big belly, stated, the power of the Grand Archon spreads across the land. Clea won't be smiling for long. But Clea didn't engage in a war of words with him. She immediately ordered everyone here to be taken to Stormwind. Then, Clay raised the Dragonblood family seal. He heavily stamped it on the document. From this moment on, the rule of these heartless lackeys comes to an end. This place will become a new nation. A new world. Then Clay took out a document. And this was the document abolishing slavery, as well as the decree to expel everyone from here. Karata trembled with rage. He couldn't believe he was played by a child. Kalatu took out the documents he had already prepared. At this moment, Clay stopped pretending with him, because the preparations had been completed. Are you saying you deceived the previous lords like this? Kalatu felt something was off. Then Clay asked Karatu to summon all his close associates. He needed to get to know them. Karatu agreed immediately. Moments later, at the inauguration ceremony, I'll give you the authority in a moment. Karata had a wicked smile on his face. She was overjoyed. Kids are easy to please. Ah! If General Clay handed over the Lord's authority to him, then Clay could avoid dealing with these trivial matters. He could live freely every day, enjoying himself. Clay agreed with his point and said it made sense. The next morning, Kalatu came early to pay his respects. Clay pretended to look like he hadn't slept enough, indicating that he really wanted to sleep a little longer. Karatu immediately expressed his thoughts. Hermione immediately agreed on behalf of the entire clan. Although Pyru pretends to be tough, he still feels unconvinced inside. Because he has experienced too much deceit, he can only hope that this kid is different from the useless ones in the past. He wanted to have a good talk with him. Pilu, however, looked disdainful. Then Clay stated that it was all a misunderstanding before. Tomorrow is his inauguration ceremony. He has a plan that requires their cooperation. Niaoli was the first to object. She took a quick step forward and lifted Pai Lu high up. After all, how could a girl who could protect herself in such an environment be an ordinary person? Xiao also expressed his shock to Clay. Then Clay asked Hermione to put down Pilu, used to express the gratitude of all the different races here. Suddenly, Xiao Bu and Shuri burst into the room with Pai Lu. At this moment, the four of them locked eyes. Pai Lu was even more furious, unable to believe that you weren't a good person either. Hearing this, he promised her that he would make this a land of freedom, where everyone would be free. Hermione was stunned, because previous lords had all colluded with Karatu. Then Hermione kissed him passionately. Even the strongest berserker cannot resist Clay. Clay finally understands why Vilu, the son of a swordmaster, became a bandit here. Clay gathered his spiritual power into his palm. In an instant, the slave rune on Hermione was removed. Clay crosses his arms. He asks why they didn't resist. Hermione replies weakly that they couldn't do it. The power of the runes comes from teachings. It is the power of faith. Then he asked Miaoli about the rune on his chest. Miaoli explained that it's a slave rune. All the non-humans in Praz have it. Here, non-humans can only become slaves. Leaving is not an option. However, after a moment, Clay understood everything. Karata definitely didn't send him to do this. He's just pretending to be dumb to protect himself. The young girl in front of him is so clever. Clay knows he can work with her. Little did he know, Miaoli was holding a fairy tale book, and, with a naive expression, asked, "What kind of story does the young master like?" Clay looked at the innocent girl in front of him, as she seriously flipped through the pages. Could it be that he was thinking too much? The next moment, a pure alien girl named Mia peeked her head in. She shyly stated that she was here to serve. Klein was so frightened that he collapsed to the ground. After all, he had never experienced the world in his last life. In the face of such situations, he would always know how to respond. Klein immediately had the radar notify the bridge. Make sure Kalatu doesn't find out. With a sound that cut through the night sky, the door was suddenly knocked on. Klein hurriedly asked who was there, and says she's here about business. What would you do? After arriving in Pellets, Clea learned the true conditions of the people through radar. She also discovered Pyru, who had robbed her before. Clay saw the true lives of the people of Pallets and the crystal ball. It was a dire situation. The people are struggling to survive. Clea certainly knows that everything extravagant here is deliberately orchestrated by Karatu. When a young girl suddenly bursts into your room, take good care of this little brat. After Clay escaped from the shooting scene, he hid back in his room. He was preparing to enjoy the real scene of Pallets, with the radar's real-time imagery. As the radar left, after Clay left, Kalatu turned to the young women of the tribe and said, "Miaoli, you truly live up to being the daughter of a tribal chief." Suddenly, Kalatu began to tease him. With a wicked smile, he indicated that you should know who the true master of Pallets is. Terra too, although calm on the surface, but inside, he was already overjoyed. He thought that Clay was just a little brat who had never experienced the pleasures of intimacy. It would be as easy as pie to fool him. Knowing he couldn't explain himself, Clay immediately left the scene. He was focusing on the rune on the girl's chest, but the foreign girl had no idea. She immediately blushed in embarrassment. She quickly screamed and stepped back. Clay waved his hands frantically, trying to explain the misunderstanding. But beyond this door, it was his territory. Then, a beautiful girl from another tribe brought wine. But Clay's attention was on the girl's chest. Could he also be a pervert like me? Of course not. Karatu introduced that these were girls from other tribes. He also mentioned that everything here belonged to Clay. Clay had absolute control. Clay understood what he meant. He could do whatever he wanted here. Suddenly, a sexy and enchanting mermaid leaped out of the fountain. She wrapped her arms around Sam, declaring that she could satisfy all of the adults' wishes. It's easy to imagine that Sam was already deeply entranced. Then, a pure and beautiful girl flew in from the sky. Meanwhile, Sam had already been attracted by the fragrance nearby. He hurriedly ran to the edge of the pool. When he took a big sip of the pond water, he discovered that the fountain was actually wine. And it was a fine wine worth a lot. Clay smiled knowingly. He immediately understood his intentions. Then Karatu brought them to a luxurious and extravagant place. With a courteous expression, he mentioned that there were endless surprises waiting for Clay to discover. Xianya happily accepts the bouquet, indicating that this place is not the so-called backward area. It's even more lively than Stormwind City. Before long, tax officer Karatu also came to hypocritically welcome Clay. He enthusiastically led Clay to the mansion. Soon, the Longshua family's convoy entered the city in great force. At this moment, Clay believes that rather than getting entangled in solid conspiracies, it's better to resolve the internal issues here first. At this moment, outside the carriage, there is a sea of people. Everyone is raising banners to welcome Clay. Why should they let their own family members act as robbers here? Sam grinned and said there's nothing to be troubled about. Just catch one and ask, and you'll know. Klein believed it was best not to act rashly. before understanding the situation. Years ago, the lovesick archbishop drove away the Carlo family, the Sword Saints, on unfounded charges. When the old man returned to Stormwind City, they have already disappeared without a trace. Xiao scratched his head and said, as a powerful force on the mainland, it's indeed difficult to deal with. Klein learned everything from the power that Pilu just used. He is the son of Carlo, the Sword Saint, just like his father. Xiao Wenyan also realized it. No wonder I always felt like I had seen his moves somewhere. If the young master hadn't woken up, we'd already be dead because of you. Clay smoothed things over, saying it wasn't his fault. The opponent is the son of the Sword Saint, with the assistance of a six-spear magical beast. In an instant, Joe awakened. He then sprang up and asked if his young master was injured. Such a loyal subordinate warmed Clay's heart. But Sam, holding the potion, wasn't pleased. He pointed at Xiao and scolded him. After Clay gets rid of the bandits, he immediately took out a healing potion for the seriously injured, and made Joe take it, then told Sam to distribute the remaining potions to the wounded soldiers. When Joe drank the potion, an overwhelming vitality suddenly erupted. National Tax Officer Karatu was holding a wine glass, waiting for Clay with a sleazy smile. When you take office as a new official, you'll face flattery from the powerful. How will you respond? Focusing solely on saving their boss. Completely forgot about the robbery. By the time Pillow finally escaped from the water prison, Clay and his group had long fled. Meanwhile, in the province of Plaritz, they were blown away by Clay's casual vine technique. Then Clay hurriedly helped up the heavily injured Xiao. He ordered everyone to break through quickly, heading towards Paritz, and these lackeys were truly loyal. Pilru, trapped in the water prison, heard this, and could only feel helpless rage. As for the rest of these little brothers, besides their large numbers, they didn't have any particularly strong abilities. Even in a frenzy, one cannot escape. Klein then explained that this is a water spirit of the elven race. It loves your fury after going berserk the most. Although it won't threaten your life, it'll be quite painful, wrapping him entirely within it. At that moment, Pillow mocked it as just a simple water magic, but the next moment he realized he was wrong, because in this water prison, it would continuously drain his power. Holding a scroll, he said, such a fiery temper. The air is dry. Be careful with the flames. With the help of the scroll's power, a fierce column of water attacked Pillu. At this moment, she was unleashing her berserk power with abandon, though the price would be considerable. Looking at the supplies, he felt it was well worth the cost. The next moment, the awakened Klein made a dazzling entrance. Or maybe he just wanted to prevent further casualties. Under Sienna's tearful gaze of joy, Clay awakened. The berserk Pyru was unstoppable. She charged straight at the supply wagon, watching as his boss sent Joe flying. The younger brothers immediately felt a surge of morale. Meanwhile, the knights were repeatedly defeated. The weak and helpless Sienna could only pray for Clay to wake up soon. Perhaps he couldn't stand seeing his sister cry. Piru's berserk strike followed immediately. In an instant, Joe was spitting blood. His whole body shot out like a cannonball. One of the underlings, who was still in the middle of a fight, took the time to explain, "That's our boss going berserk." Impressed? Sam, who was fighting him, didn't know whether to comment. It seemed as if he could destroy everything in an instant. With the enhancement of the red-eyed effect, Xiao was greatly shocked. This guy turns out to be a berserker. But before he could react, even the armor couldn't withstand it. In an instant, it shattered completely. With his furious roar, a tremendous bloodthirsty power erupted. His entire form also swelled several times. What a truly dramatic scene it was. Joe paid no attention to the chaos happening behind him. Instead, he pondered where he had seen this person's moves before. But suddenly, Pyru gently picked up. "Get moving and grab the supplies instead of watching the show here." Then, a bunch of seemingly fierce but actually foolish lackeys roared and charged toward the convoy. Sam, captivated by Clay's charm, stepped forward at this moment. Both sides immediately engaged in battle. A gang of mountain bandits versus a gang of outlaws. He always feels that this person's tricks are familiar. Sure enough, experience prevails. Xiao Shui first knocked off Pyru's helmet. A group of lackeys immediately rushed over to check on their boss's injuries. Pyru, however, impatiently said, "Do you really think I can't beat this old man?" Who would have thought that Pillaging would say he had no interest in fighting with an old man? Xiao Wanin was instantly enraged. "Doesn't turning 40 mean you're just another 20? Then, mixed with the shadow of his sword strike towards Pilu, there was a hint of resentment. Although Xiao doesn't like what this person is saying, pierced through the heart by the beast's strike. Seeing his warhorse killed, he tightened his grip on the sword. His hands clenched even more. The two were evenly matched in their first clash. Meanwhile, Pillow had a wicked smile on his face. The next moment, his mount launched a serpent-like attack. Xiao sensed the danger, and quickly leaped away. But his warhorse wasn't so lucky. This guy in front of us, wielding a 30-meter giant cleaver, claims to be the master of this land, Pyru. and his mount is also a level 6 magical beast. Seeing this, Xiao the Earth Dragon immediately charged at him on his warhorse. But just at that moment, there was a sudden loud noise ahead. Everyone immediately stood ready. As expected, it was again the Dixie. Clay and his companions finally reached the border of pallets. However, Clay, due to overexertion of his magic, was falling into a coma. He would occasionally cast magic in celebration, scaring Sonya, who quickly tried to stop him. In this world of the survival of the fittest, what would people sacrifice to gain power? The technique of yellowing can unleash one's potential to the extreme in a short time, but the price paid for it is a heavy toll and difficult repercussions. After overcoming various crises, "Aren't I impressive?" Xiao Dongji expressed his agreement. He also didn't expect that Shenya was such a powerful magician. With the crisis resolved, they could finally reach Beilatzi. In the face of nature, this group of knights didn't even have a chance to fight back. In an instant, they were engulfed by the heavy snow. Afterwards, Shenya stood with hands on hips. He asked arrogantly, "How is it? The next to die will be him." As Shenya's voice fell, he cast a spell. Immediately, there was a loud roar. Avalanches occurred on both mountain peaks. "A few wooden logs think they can stop us?" But before the words were finished, a massive figure appeared in front of them. Shenya said while sitting on Pip, "If you return alive, tell Shirshing." Sam raised the magic sword high, and ordered his men to strike hard. Then logs continuously rolled down the slope. The leader underfoot still dismissively said, as Joe gave the signal. A large number of logs instantly rolled down the mountain. The knights had no idea what was happening. Their faces were full of fear. At the top of the mountain, not long after, Clay and the others set off again. But at that moment, a group of people was watching them closely. In the next moment, a group of knights charged toward the Longshui family's convoy. However, Joe calmly whistled. Then, with a roar that also carried 1,000 years of bad breath, he charged at Clay. In an instant, Clay awakened. With one punch, he sent the foul-mouthed Pai flying. Then, weakened, Clay took out the magical sword he had promised Sam earlier. He assigned a task to Joe. Not dead. He then mentioned that although he didn't know when Clay would wake up, he could make Clay wake up for a moment. In the next second, Pip held his breath, gathering a lot of air in his stomach. Joe was trembling with fear. If he could, he would even wish to die in Clay's place. Pippi interrupted Joe's solo performance immediately. He said he was just asleep. But suddenly, they saw Xiao hurriedly running over, holding Clay. Pippi and Xianya hurriedly asked what had happened. Joe quickly told them everything. Then he placed Clay in the tongue car. Looking at the unconscious Clay, the next moment, the severely injured Clay fell heavily into the snow. Looking at the barely breathing Clay in front of him, he felt a wave of helplessness. On the other side of the camp, Xianya and Pippi were waiting for Clay, feeling bored. But the bandit group was completely wiped out. They wiped off the remaining bloodstains from their gear, preparing to share the good news with Clay. Then Xiao excitedly rushed towards him, but when he encountered his young master, Clay was exhilarated at this moment. It turns out that leading an army is far more exhilarating than wandering alone. No one knows how much time had passed. The battle ended with a complete victory for the Dragonblood family. Not only were there no casualties, so Clay didn't want to repeat the same mistake. Today, even if he were to die, he could not afford to back down. As Clay consumed the potion, an overwhelming surge of magical power filled his entire body. Otherwise, he will be completely destroyed in a moment. Clay, however, said it was fine. He took out the most powerful healing potion of the elf clan. The scene before him reminded Clay of when he faced the gods alone back in the day. Just like now, when the Dragon Blood Knights, only a few hundred strong, faced tens of thousands of mountain bandits. The cost of this is evident. Just activating it, his body has already started to break apart. Seeing this, Vina hurriedly urged Clay to stop. They couldn't help but feel a bit wary. Then both sides began the battle again. Although with Vina's assistance, it was still level 10 magic. Now, Clay is just a level 3 mage. Then, they charged at the bandits again. Looking at the group of mountain bandits, staring at the Night Order that had just been on the brink of death, suddenly regained their injuries. Even those on the verge of death were restored to their original state. Clay hurried back to the battlefield. With Vina's assistance, Clay forcefully used the 10th level magic Blessing of Light to aid the Dragonblood Knights. With the help of the Blessing of Light, everyone in the Night Order received a significant boost. Would it really not harm his body? What would happen if a 3rd level magician forcibly used 10th level magic? Only shattered remains, body and soul obliterated. After rescuing the victims, the overwhelming magic made it clear that this was the power of the 10th level magic, Radiance. What amazed him was that his young master was still sealed. Why could he use magic of this level? She wields her sword, directing the remaining warriors. Suddenly, a dragon's roar reverberates across the battlefield. The knight's injuries instantly heal. Their strength and speed are greatly enhanced. Xiao feels this. Clay gave him a different feeling. On the other side of the battlefield, the Dragon Blood Knights are locked in a bloody battle with a group of bandits. It seems they are about to give in. Xiao Kai still believes in Clay's decisions. People are always the most precious wealth. The disaster victims here can make Plaza the richest place on this continent in a short time. Then, Clay handed the Hydra's venom to Sam. He himself ran back to help the Dragon Blood Knights, although Sam didn't like taking orders from others. Chanting Clay's name. Sam, standing by, expressed confusion. You're giving everything away. How are you going to make a big profit? Clay just smiled calmly and said, aren't I already making a huge profit? Wherever we are? Everyone was extremely excited upon hearing this. I immediately agreed to Clay. Then Clay even told the refugees to divide the bandits' food and goods. He said he didn't need anything. The next moment, a crowd rushed toward the warehouse in a frenzy. The old man was taken aback. This child, just a few years old, actually has land. Then Clay waved his hand. He said, I can exempt you all from taxes. As long as you follow me, they might as well stay here and be sold elsewhere by the bandits. At least they could survive. Clay also shared his thoughts. He wanted this group of people to follow him to his territory. When Clay stepped into the cell, the people inside weren't very surprised. One of the older men came forward and said that even if they were rescued, they would starve to death outside. Soon, the two arrived at a prison cell. There were very few guards here. Clay took care of them with a single vine tree. When they got closer, they realized it was filled with whales. Clay quickly split up with Sam to rescue people. A level 7 mage vanished from the world just like that. Sam was in disbelief. A single vial of poison dealt with the level 7 mage. Clay didn't waste time talking to Sam though. Instead, he urged him to lead the way quickly. And Clay explained, didn't I tell you? Stay still. The more you use magic, the stronger the Hydra's venom becomes. As soon as Clay finished speaking, and grabbed Clay by the throat, but in an instant, the sorcerer's body rapidly decayed. He looked at his hands in horror. He asked Clay what he did to him. Then Clay took out a potion from the spatial realm. Just as the sorcerer approached, Clay suddenly threw the potion at him, and it turned out to be Hydra's venom. The next moment, the sorcerer acted as if nothing had happened, but Clay refused, because he had already discovered who that person was. And Vena's power would have other uses shortly. As for the mage behind him, Clay had already thought of a countermeasure. Klein acting alone was easier to deal with. At this moment, Vena also noticed the wizard, and reminded Klein that this person is a level 7 wizard, not easy to deal with. Then Vena wanted to lend her power to Clay. With a roar from Xiao, the Dragon Blood Knights charged at the bandits. Klein seized the opportunity to pull Sam in another direction. This scene was also seen by the wizard on the mountaintop. For him, Xiao did not refuse. Instead, he laughed. This suicidal tactic was something he had never heard of, but he chose to trust Clay. He needed time to do something. Sam immediately said Clay was crazy. A mere few hundred people actually think they can hold back thousands? Isn't that seeking death? Clay and his team did not choose to retreat. Seeing such a large number of bandits, the group urged Clay to break through quickly, but Clay had his own plan. He wanted Joe to hold off the bandits here. The legendary level 10 magic, like battle, can instantly heal allies' wounds, and multiply strength and speed. It's a divine weapon for team combat. After learning that their whereabouts had been exposed, so he ordered everyone to take up advantageous positions as quickly as possible. Prepare for defense. Wiener, who was crouching on top of Clay's head, asked, are we really not retreating? Clay clenched his fists and said, they've come to us. Why should we leave? At this moment, a wizard discovered Klein and his group. As the orb of light in his hand rose, the mountain bandits were all startled awake. Seeing this, Klein knew someone had informed on them. He then instructed the team to proceed with the plan. So, a team of several hundred marched slowly through the snow. On the way, Sam mentioned that he was just guiding them. When encountering danger, turn around and run. Klein didn't care about him either. Then Clay instructed Joe to select several hundred elite soldiers. He intended to launch a night raid on Qingfeng Gorge. Joe looked at Clay's decisive decision, and it seemed to him that he could see the bright thief of the Longxue family. Before long, Clay discovered through radar that the bandits were currently on high alert. But Clay firmly refused to take a detour, because he wanted to use this opportunity to catch the mastermind behind the scenes. Besides, they might make a fortune this time. And they wouldn't have to hand it over to Mom. Wouldn't that be sweet? Sam would have to serve him forever. Looking at the magical sword of the Dragon Clan in his hand, Sam agreed without a second thought. Then Xiaofu crouched down and said to Clay, Qingfeng Gorge is easy to defend but hard to attack. Should we take a detour? With a wave of Clay's palm, a sword appeared before him. Clay promised that if he lost, the sword would belong to Sam, but if he won, I was just about to wipe out all the bandits in Qingfeng Gorge. Sam was shocked and turned pale. He immediately stated that this was impossible. Clay didn't rush to refute him, but instead made a bet with Sam. Those who disobeyed were sent off as slaves. Sam couldn't stand their actions, so he was ostracized by the bandits. Clay stroked his chin and said, "I didn't expect you to be a righteous bandit. You're lucky." However, Clay didn't care. He let Sam continue speaking. He asked why they were so kind as to take in the refugees. Sam stated that he was different from the other bandits. The others made the refugees their subordinates, to feed these people. He just happened to hear someone say the brat from the Dragonblood family was passing by with a convoy. Joe heard Sam calling for their young master. The little ghost immediately drew his sword. Sam was so scared that he kept stepping back. Too many residents have entered the mountains. There's nothing we can do about it. Craven felt puzzled. Is he really taking in the residents? Who would have thought the bandit leader before him had indeed taken in a large number of residents? And Sam swallowed nothing. He almost choked on the food. After finally catching his breath, he said, "If it were in the past, I definitely wouldn't dare to intercept Long Shui's convoy. But this year's snowfall came too early." The next second, the once stubborn Sam began to devour the food heartily. Joe watched as Sam ate with great enjoyment. He kicked him away. He angrily shouted, "Stop eating! Who sent you? We'll take care of your body, boss." Then Clay, holding a large lamb leg, walked up to Sam, tempting him. Smelling the delicious aroma, Sam couldn't help but swallow. Sam, however, stubbornly insisted they were a bunch of traitors. Klein let go of the few who had just begged for mercy. He even left them some hot pot. The few underlings sprinted away upon hearing this. He didn't forget to turn back and tell his boss, "A wise man adapts to circumstances." Just then, Klein approached several people with a freshly roasted leg of lamb. He intentionally stood in the upwind position. Soon, a few of his underlings couldn't hold back. They quickly begged Klein for mercy, watching helplessly as they enjoyed the feast. "I have to say, this move is too cruel for someone like me, who loves to eat." Seeing that his little brother was about to give in, Sam scolded everyone. Clay changed his interrogation method. Then, Clay served hot pot to his knights, while he prepared roast lamb on the side. As for Sam and his group, they were all tied to a wooden stake. They were definitely eating hot pot and grilling meat right in front of them. After Clay captured Sam and his group using a trick, Sam, adhering to professional ethics, refused to reveal the mastermind behind it. Seeing that Sam was tough, as the wind and snow settled, Clay approached Sam. He questioned him about who was behind it. In the harsh wilderness, what's the best way to interrogate a prisoner? But Clay quickly cast a blood magic spell, and in an instant, a giant snowball appeared over Sam's head. With a loud bang, Sam was trapped in the snow, unable to move. The knights charged in from all directions. They surrounded Sam and his group. But Sam wasn't ready to surrender just yet. Following the strategy of taking out the leader first, Sam turned and attacked Clay. In an instant, the knight transformed into a snowman. At this moment, Sam realized he'd been tricked. But it was too late. Clay had already surrounded them. As Clay gave the order, as the shadow disappeared, Sam immediately ordered his men to rush down. The next moment, Sam and his group had already charged into the camp. As Sam raised his sword high, a knight was instantly cut down. At this moment, a group of people were watching them. This group belonged to the Langya gang of Qingfeng Gorge. Their leader's name was Sam. He had the power of 5G silver rank. At this moment, he was discussing strategy with a man in black. Clay wanted to drag the people behind him out. The closer they got to Braz, the colder it became. Cold. The wind and snow at night grew even more violent. Klein and his group had no choice but to set up camp. Looking at the approaching winter outside, Clay felt it's better to be safe than sorry. After all, besides this truckload of supplies and provisions, his own head was also quite valuable. Then Clay asked Joe for a favor. Clay explains that someone has been following their convoy the entire way. Xiao Wenyun doesn't mind, because bandits often appear on this road. However, none have attempted to rob the Longshu family yet. Then Clay reaches out of the carriage. Clay and his group set off into the Qingfeng Gorge. Clay is analyzing the situation along the way through the images transmitted in real time by the radar. Sienna is bored, lying on top of Pippi. She asks Clay why he keeps staring at the crystal ball. But Shurshin on the side wasn't happy, because the old man was there to prevent him and the king from causing trouble for Clay. However, Shurshin had already made arrangements. He was determined to prevent Clay from reaching Boras. As the soldiers sang loudly, he would become the most powerful force on this continent. On the city walls, the king, the old man, and the stalwart archbishop were seeing Clay off. The old man even left his trusted aide bridge by Clay's side, so he wasn't worried that Clay would encounter any danger. As for Xianya, due to the dragon scale herb, Staying in Stormwind will also be dangerous. Then Clay, using the highest etiquette, expressed his gratitude to his mother for her thoughtful care. And in his heart, he made a resolution. In the near future. But Joe simply raised a finger and made a shushing gesture. Seeing this, Clay also understood why his mother had inexplicably detained his 2 carriages. Given Clay's current rank, he is only entitled to use a 2-horse carriage. If the king were to catch him violating this rule again, life would become even harder for him. Just as Clay was complaining about the injustice of the heavens, Sonya appeared beside him. Clay suddenly split into 2. While talking about how this carriage doesn't need horses, he asked Xianya why she was here. I never expected that the little kid who was still crying for food yesterday can now stand on his own. Then the beautiful fairy mother suddenly changed her tone. She slyly said to Clay, "Why don't you give me 2 cars as a gift for being your mother?" Clay didn't dare to say a word against it. He could only watch with tears as his mother took away the little cars he had worked hard to make. It can make the snake cart move smoothly, 100 kilometers in a day and a night, and it only costs a piece of candy. It's simply economical and practical. Hearing this, the mother elf hugged Clay tightly. He completed it in just 1 night. And the car even has level 7 magic on it. But hasn't Clay been sealed? It's all thanks to Vina's help. As long as Vina injects wind magic into the magic box once, what would you do? Of course, give it to her with tears in your eyes. After working all night, Clay finally finished modifying the Hydra's skull. The elf mother was in disbelief at the sight. Now he needs Vina's help to make something. At dawn, Mother gazes at the war chariot made from the skull of a Hydra in the sky, astonished, leaving 8 people speechless. When your greedy mom forcefully takes your achievement, as well as Vina, who was sleeping soundly among the pile of coins. Vina, disturbed from her sweet dream by Clay, looks annoyed. She asks Clay what he wants. Clay responds, asking her not to be so hostile. Candy can also be eaten outside. After all, his treasure was still in the snowy mountains. Then Tina soared away into the night. After Tina left, Clay also prepared to do his own things. He took out the Hydra's skull and a large amount of gold coins from his spatial realm. Tina secretly felt regret. Is everything so complicated? After a moment, Tina returned Clay to the dragon blood family, and said goodbye to Clay. I just want to be free. As a ruler, I certainly can't be subject to others. This is just to show the king that I am not easy to bully. After listening to Clay's explanation, this left the king feeling disheveled in the wind. At that moment, Clay was joking with Tina about the king's little schemes, but Tina raised a question. She felt that Clay was not a greedy person. Clay explained that he was not greedy for money. The dragon wouldn't last long on its own. Upon hearing this, the king immediately offered an additional 200 carts of food. Clay saw how generous the king was. He didn't press him further. After bowing, he left the castle with the dragon. He immediately waved his hand to decline. He then decided to completely exempt the taxes of Bilaz. As long as they bring the dragon over, that's fine. But Clay was not prepared to stop there. He continued, saying that it was a long way to Bilaz. Plus, it requires a lot of taxes, so he has no choice but to leave it here. Clay then mentioned that the dragon really likes His Majesty. It will come to play with His Majesty every night from now on. The king listened to Clay and said he wanted to familiarize the dragon with the surroundings of Stormhold. The king sensed the hidden meaning behind the words. Are you planning to leave this dragon in Stormwind? Clay said he had made an agreement with the dragon to take care of it, but Palace is too desolate. He discovered a giant dragon glaring at him from outside the window. In an instant, his legs went weak and he collapsed to the ground. At that moment, Clay appeared beside the dragon. Seeing Clay, the king finally breathed a sigh of relief. Clay said he was about to leave. Since the king wanted him dead, Clay naturally wouldn't let him live comfortably. As Tina flew over the castle, the howling wind woke the king. When he got up to see where the wind was coming from, in the end, he agreed. And this was exactly what Clay wanted. The king accidentally played into his hands. Clay then piloted Tina toward the king's castle, indicating that he certainly knew. Because of this, it was a great place for him to train. Upon hearing this, the old man hesitated slightly, yearning for Clay's sincere gaze. At that moment, Clay hugged his grandfather tightly, saying it was okay. The old man bent down and squatted. He asked, "Do you know where that place is?" Clay clenched his fists tightly. Because the nobles who went there were either dead or crippled, he feared that Clay would also become like that. The next moment, the old man rushed over with a sword in hand, ready to strike his own son first, before pleading with the king. So it is very desolate. Xianya also understood. This is not a reward. It is clearly an exile. After teaching Dar's elven mother a lesson, she now turned her gaze. The elven mother is having a fierce argument with Kedar. The reason is that Dar didn't stop the king's scheme in time. He could only watch as Clay was sent to the plains of Plaz. Although this place is vast and rich in resources, most of it is occupied by beasts and other worldly creatures. As a king, When you are fast asleep in your castle, and you open your eyes to find a giant dragon staring at you, how would you feel? At this moment, a great battle is occurring in the Dragonblood family. He emphasized that this place is adjacent to the Elf Kingdom. Clay immediately agreed. Getting a promotion should be a joyful matter. Kedar wore a displeased expression. Clay also noticed the subtle change in his father's expression. Dar said it's fine to call off the troops, but things can't just end like this. Then the king turned with a look of deep concern at Clay. He declared that he would make Clay a first-class baron of the Kingdom of Wei, and he would grant the Tybraz province to Clay. Wen Yan has also reacted. The current dragon blood family is far too strong with the help of the dragons. It's really overwhelming. He then asked Dar if he could do him a favor and let this matter rest. Can we just leave it at that? But the archbishop quietly said, Your Majesty, you still have the mind to blame me? We should think about what to do with the dragon clan behind Clay. Be careful, or you might lose your throne. Your Majesty. At that moment, the king and Stone walked over. The king said it was fortunate that you arrived in time. Otherwise, Stormwind would have been a slaughterhouse. Clay immediately informed the king of what had happened. Knowing the situation, the king was preparing to confront the Archbishop of the Heart about this. The knights instantly felt terrified. Even the king was shocked and frightened. In the next moment, Clay's father rushed over and hugged Clay and Xianya tightly, because they thought Shirshing had killed Clay. I was just about to launch a major attack on the Stone family to avenge Clay. And this was a confrontation between the Shirshing family and the Dragonblood family. The helpless king is mediating in the middle. At this moment, the knights in the army noticed a giant dragon in the sky. Then, Tina landed gracefully between the two armies. A roar of the dragon stunned everyone present. I saved 2 spirit elixirs for you as compensation. Hearing this, Tina's dissatisfaction immediately vanished. She turned to Clay with a flurry of compliments. At this moment, Xianya noticed something unusual. It seemed that 2 armies were fighting in Stormwind City. Tina took Clay and Xianya away from Dragon Island. On the way, she chattered happily, What a great trip this has been for you. You really struck it rich this time. After hearing Tina's jealous comment, Clay patted her back and said, Don't be jealous. Only a handful of people can use the light's praise. While Clay was still in shock, the Dragon King stroked his forehead and said, I see sincerity and kindness in you. I believe that one day you will stand at the peak of this continent. Not long after. At this moment, Clay also understands the value of this gift. Legend has it that when Light's Praise is activated, it can double the power and speed of allied forces. The key point is that it grants almost limitless stamina. Even those on the brink of death can quickly recover. Across the entire continent. When he thought of it, no matter where Clyde was, he would receive the help of the Dragon Clan, and it contains all the magical power of a Light Dragon King. When Clay fully masters this dragon horn, he will be able to use the Light's Praise. On the other hand, he also gave himself a dragon scale grass. The Dragon King, upon hearing this, slammed the table and stood up. He said we, the Dragon Clan, should be the ones to thank you. Thank you for helping us bring back the Dragon King's bones. Then the Dragon King took out a dragon horn and gave it to Clyde. She didn't dare speak out. After all, each of those old guys on the stage was a Dragon King in their own right. After the banquet ended, Clay expressed his gratitude to the Dragon Kings. On one hand, he saved his sister. Tina couldn't embezzle any of it. This caused Tina, who loves money dearly, to feel immense torment. Meanwhile, Clay was eating, drinking, and having fun with a group of Dragon Kings in the lair. Oof. Although Tina was grumbling inside, Tina looked at the endless line. She silently sighed in her heart. After finally selling all the potions, Tina dragged her weary body away from the pile of gold. Looking at such a vast amount of treasure, what's the coolest way to make an entrance? Of course, it's riding a dragon descending from the sky. The Dragon Kings, ever since learning that Clyde's potion can permanently enhance the dragon's physique. Then, she had her family members register and purchase from Tina. Before she knew it, the line grew longer and longer. It was said that this potion is very difficult to make, and someone has already reserved it. If there's a breach of contract, a huge penalty has to be paid. Then he turned and eagerly said that the Dragon Kings just need to pay a little extra. During a battle between 2 armies. I'm not that kind of person. The Dragon King was startled to hear this. You have to know that many of his kin have reached a bottleneck in their cultivation. Clay, who was possessed by a shady merchant, wore a difficult expression. If you don't believe it, you can ask him. The Dragon Kings all looked as if they had found a treasure, staring intently at Clay. Watching the impatient look on the Dragon Kings, Clay thought, isn't this forcing me to get rich? I'm just curious about what Clay ate before. That could suddenly unleash such powerful water elemental force. At this moment, Clay also understood the Dragon King's intention. He explained the uses of the many elixirs he developed. The next second, Clay, possessed by a shrewd merchant, said this thing is a one-time solution for the Dragon Clan. But at that moment, more dragon souls rushed towards Clay. In a crisis, the Dragon King blocked the attack for Clay. The proud Dragon King stated, "I'm not here to save Clay." The two Dragon Kings saw this. "I have to admit that I misjudged things before." And relying on the protection of the water spirit pill, Clay easily obtained the dragon scale grass. There's a chance. Then, Clay took out a water spirit pill. He bit into it. A surge of powerful water elemental magic burst forth instantly, wrapping Clay tightly within it. Clay is by no means reckless. On the other hand, as Clay approached the dragon scale grass, the lingering resentment of the dragon clan instantly surrounded him. But fortunately, it's a fire-type dragon soul. As long as I use the opposite attribute to resist, heading straight for the dragon scale grass, the surrounding Dragon Kings all thought Clay was too greedy, and would surely pay the price. But the Dragon King did not think so, judging from Clay's previous calmness and abilities. "If you step out of my defense, you may be torn to shreds in an instant." Klein, however, was not afraid. As long as the Dragon King agrees, that's enough. In the next moment, Klein charged out of the Dragon King's defensive formation. Though Clay said it was no trouble, he still wanted another dragon scale. The grass is used to the seal on oneself. The Dragon King did not refuse. He simply reminded that the pressure and resentment here are extremely strong. At that moment, the previously dull dragon bone suddenly radiated a dazzling light. At this time, the Dragon Kings let out a mournful and sorrowful dragon's roar. It seemed to be in memory of the deceased Dragon Emperor. After the ceremony, the Dragon Kings expressed their heartfelt gratitude to Clay. It seems they all came to attend the Dragon King's funeral. Suddenly, Clay noticed that there were dragon scale herbs here. Before he could finish his amazement, the Dragon King instructed him to take out the Dragon Emperor's remains. In the next moment, an enormous dragon bone appeared before everyone. At this moment, the Dragon King insisted that Clay stay by his side. Otherwise, the pressure inside will instantly obliterate Clay's soul. Then the Dragon King charged into the portal with Clay. At this moment, many dragons soared here. Each dragon's pressure was no weaker than that of the Dragon King beside Clay. He had to admit that this approach was quite wise. Afterward, the Dragon King asked Clay to accompany him to a certain place. Inside the Dragon Cave, the Dragon King transformed from an immensely imposing dragon into a remarkable young man. Clay then arrived with the Dragon King at a teleportation portal, but also the Dragon King's wisdom. It won't be long before the second magic emperor among humans will appear. Then, according to his promise, Clay informed the Dragon King about placing the Dragon King's bones in the spatial realm. Although the Dragon King did not like his cleverness, because this power has already reached the level of a high-ranking magician, and the magic array Xianya cast, even Clay has never seen it. But the Dragon King standing nearby knows what's going on. Dragon scale grass is the crystallization of the Dragon King's power. At this moment, Xianya has not only inherited the Dragon King's power, but the magic within her was overflowing. With a wave of Xianya's small hand, she was about to perform for Clay. In an instant, a burst of blood-red power shot into the sky. Clay was amazed at the sight. She hugged him tightly. Seeing Xianya so full of energy, he also let out a sigh of relief. But he still asked Xianya if she felt unwell. Xianya said that not only had she recovered, Clay was anxiously waiting outside, his heart filled with worry. Suddenly, a familiar shout swept away all of Clay's concerns. The next moment, a lively Xianya came running towards Clay. He will personally tear apart Clyde and Xianya's souls. Clyde listened. He just stared at the Dragon King. This imposing and majestic young man turned out to be the powerful Dragon King. After the Dragon King took Xianya away. However, your threat is quite useful to the Dragon Clan. Then the Dragon King took Xianya away. He told Clyde to wait outside. He will use dragon scale grass to heal this girl. But if Clyde deceives him, if you want the Dragon Emperor's bones, you must first give him the dragon scale herb. Otherwise, even if you die, he will destroy the bones first. The Dragon King was not angry upon hearing this. Instead, he approvingly said, "What a cocky kid." But first he needed to see if the Dragon King's bones were truly in Clay's possession. Clay was no 3-year-old, just making verbal promises. How could I hand over the bones? Klein and the Dragon King argued with reason. He was not after the miraculous effects of the dragon scale grass. He just wanted to save his sister. Upon hearing this, the Dragon King understood Clay's intentions. He stated that he could give Clay the dragon scale grass. Suddenly, the Dragon King gave a slight wave. The immense pressure vanished instantly. The Dragon King looked down at the tiny Clay beneath him. He was curious about what could make Clay fearless of death. Clay revealed the reason behind it. An invisible pressure enveloped Tina, who was standing beside Clay. She hurriedly stopped Clay from taking back his words. But Clay did not give up. Instead, he gritted his teeth against the Dragon King's pressure. He was determined to obtain the dragon scale herb. "I have an unreasonable request. I wish to exchange the Dragon Emperor's bones for something." The Dragon King stroked his chin and asked, "What is it you desire?" But when the Dragon King learned that Clay wanted dragon scale grass, his expression immediately turned furious. Clay had no way of knowing, but just in size alone, it was 10 times bigger than Tina and the Black Dragon. The Dragon King got straight to the point and said, "I heard you found the Dragon King's remains." Clay then jumped down from Tina's head. He said, "Respected Dragon King, it was the order from the elders of the tribe." The Black Dragon had no choice but to stop the attack. The immense pressure just now made Clay feel as if his very soul was trembling. Then the Black Dragon brought them before the Dragon King. How powerful the dragon before him was. Tina stated that this was her friend. Then the Black Dragon took a fighting stance and said, "If you win, I will let you enter." Suddenly, an incredibly heavy pressure came, causing the Black Dragon to relent, and encountered the Black Dragon guarding it. The dragon roared as soon as they met. Luckily, Tina stepped in to deflect the attack. The Black Dragon saw that there was a human with Tina. It immediately wanted to capture the leaks. However, Clay said for Shinya's sake, not to mention Longwei, even the gods and Buddhas of his past life wouldn't scare him. Soon, they arrived at Dragon Island. He never gave him a chance to cast any spells. Meanwhile, Tina is taking Clay across countless oceans to Dragon Island. Along the way, she keeps reminding Clay not to speak carelessly in front of the Dragon King, otherwise, just the dragon's might could shatter his soul. At this point, someone asked, "Is Archbishop Shirshin really that weak?" In fact, he has quite a talent for magic, especially in the area of sealing techniques. But unfortunately, the old man prefers close combat. Blood spewed from his mouth. After the old man dismounted, he slowly walked up to Shirshin, then stomped heavily on Shirshin's chest, and said, "The loyalty of the Dragonblood family to the Empire cannot be shaken by just a few words from you," and simply raised the sword in his hand. In Shirshin's incredulous gaze, a sword aura swiftly followed. Even though Shirshin resisted with all his might, still crashed heavily into a big tree. Clay's father immediately led the knights to charge in. At this moment, the Archbishop rushed over to stop them, and even threatened, saying the Longxue family dared to attack the Shadow Guards. Are they trying to rebel? The old man looked at the panting Shirshin. But the old man doesn't care about all that. Anyone who dares to touch Clay, he will kill without hesitation. As for the barrier of the secret realm, it was shattered by Pippi's Beast King roar. Upon learning of Clay's attack, the Dragonblood family immediately ordered their knights to rescue Clay, and they engaged in a fierce battle with the Empire's Dark Guards. Although the Shadow Guards are loyal to the Shishing family, they ultimately serve the Emperor. Clay knew, one side was reinforcements from the Solid Bishop. The other side must be the Dragonblood family rushing over upon hearing the news. No one knows just how powerful the Dragon King, the mightiest of the Dragon Clan, truly is, but just his size alone is 10 times that of Tina. No wonder it's so hard to find. Then, Clay used a space ring to store the Dragon King's remains, and they prepared to head to the legendary Dragon Island with Tina. Just as they were about to leave, they noticed a strong scent of blood outside. "You don't mean him, do you?" Tina Beijing's style has changed. "I never expected the Dragon King's remains to be in a place like this," Clay remarked. That the dwarves had hidden these dragon bones in a secret realm. Tina said, "The only way now is to find the legendary Dragon Emperor. He has been missing for hundreds of years. His size is dozens of times larger than ours." But Clay silently pointed to the dragon bones beneath them. Why the Dragon Clan decided never to give dragon scale grass to outsiders again. Craven immediately stood up and said, "No matter the cost, I have to try it myself, and help one reach the 13th level mage rank." Craven was startled. The limits of humanity can actually be broken. Tina sighed. She explained that this was the reason. Upon hearing this, Tina didn't hesitate. She said the dragon race's dragon scale grass can do it. Not only can it bring someone back to life, it can also break the human limit. He looked at the little girl in Clay's arms, saying she seemed to be on the verge of death. Clay said he had temporarily sealed Sienna's soul inside her body. Now we need to find a way to bring someone back from the dead, and ask Tina if there's any way in this world to revive him. Tina's draconic aura suddenly erupted. Several mages immediately scattered and fled. In an instant, cries of anguish echoed across the sky. Level 6 mages were as fragile as ants before the dragons. After dealing with everything, Tina suddenly appeared before Clay with a different expression. The wizard looked in disbelief at the huge creature behind him, his face filled with terror. Clay shouted, "They hurt my sister. I want them to pay the price." As Clay's words fell, in just a moment, it traveled 1,000 miles away to the snow-capped mountains. At this moment, Tina also felt Clay's call. A wizard pointed and laughed at Clay, saying that dragons are a noble and friendly race. They will respond to the call of a child. In the next moment, a giant dragon quietly appeared behind him. A few mages only appeared before Clay after the level 9 beast, Pippi, had left. Clay's expression darkened. He said, I have more than just Pippi as my helper. Then he took out the dragon scales that Tina from the dragon clan had left for her. In an instant, a surge of magic disappeared before everyone. If more enemies come to the house, it will be really dangerous. Pippi was startled for a moment. Immediately, he turned and left. Before leaving, he said, you better not die. At this moment, Pippi finally broke free from the mage's control. I want to take Clay and Xianya and escape. But Xianya's condition cannot endure any jolting right now. So Clay asked Pippi to run back first to inform about the situation here. His body started trembling uncontrollably. Suddenly, Clay noticed that Xianya's soul was dissipating. If he let the soul leave, then Xianya would truly be beyond saving. Fortunately, Clay used celestial magic to seal the dissipating soul within Xianya's body. As he channeled his power and charged at them again, his shattered arms couldn't support him using the artifact any longer. Due to the seal within him, Clay had only activated the artifact once, and the spiritual energy within him was already depleted. He slaughtered all the surrounding guards. Only a few managed to survive. But Clay wouldn't let them go so easily. To him, everyone here was responsible for Xianya's death. He intended to bury everyone here alongside Xianya. The dragon race is the strongest and noblest race on the magic continent. When you have a dragon friend, what kind of divine weapon will your enemies possess? Clay drew the divine weapon. Although Clay killed the thief with a palm thunder, it couldn't save Xianya from her serious injuries. Furious, Clay slowly approached Jotan Xiantian. His internal spiritual power surged 100-fold under the influence of his anger. He raised the magic sword high. Xianya knocked Clay aside and took the blow for him. Looking at the nearly lifeless Xianya in his hands, Clay felt lost for the first time. Meanwhile, Pip was also trapped by many mages. Xianya argued, if it weren't for me, you would have been in danger. But at that moment, a bow and arrow had already been aimed at Clay from the shadows. In a moment of extreme crisis, Pai Pai's 9th-level magical beast power suddenly erupted. The figure returned to its original form. Looking at the helpless and weak Xianya in his hands, Pippi threw him into the air forcefully. Luckily, he landed safely in Clay's arms, facing Clay's scolding. But the mage's attacks kept coming one after another, giving Clay no chance to catch his breath. Fortunately, Clay quickly pulled out an 8th-level magical beast shield. At this moment, Pai Pai, unable to resist Xianya's pleading attacks, brought him here. After discovering Clay was under attack, Clay pulled out a level 7 spell scroll, Earth Escape, but it could only block one attack. What followed was a rain of swords. Clay rolled to dodge, and used vine magic to trap the paladin guard. Then the two of them left, laughing. They felt that what they needed to do now was to wait for the sound of Clay's death knell. Meanwhile, facing the assault of a level 5 paladin and a level 6 mage, and the guard is only here to kill a child. The solid Grand Archbishop warns not to underestimate the enemy. Now that Clay is dead here, we can conveniently pin the blame on the dwarves. After all, Clay had an accident in their secret realm, and it wasn't just the guards here. There were also wizards placed by Shershin. Clay now understands that this is a trap set by the Grand Archbishop. The third prince, however, thinks it's a bit of an overreaction. A level 6 mage plus a level 5 paladin. By the time Clay realized it, he was already surrounded by guards. He still wanted to say he was just a student who wandered in by mistake. But how could the guards believe such nonsense? They immediately drew their swords. The 9 Heavens Shen Iron is a rare treasure even in the immortal realm. Why is it here? With that solid old guy's strength, he can't possibly seal him. Could there be something fishy going on? When his sister was gravely injured saving him, what kind of energy will he unleash? After discovering the 9 Heavens Shen Iron, Klein climbed onto a dragon bone that was 10 times the size of Tina. But Klein was very curious. Suddenly, Clay discovered something incredible. A gigantic dragon skeleton, with a sword embedded in the dragon's head. Clay took a closer look. The sword was actually forged from 9 Heavens Shen Iron, but something always felt off in his heart. Moreover, the soil here didn't seem to be tainted by magic. But since he was here, he decided to make himself comfortable. When soldiers come, block them. When water comes, cover it with earth. Clay followed the archbishop to a place. There were many people here. The security was strict. Fortunately, Clay managed to find an opportunity to slip in. Inside, Clay truly felt a powerful sealing magic. He asked Pippi to take Xianya home, but Xianya wanted to go too. She even started bargaining with Pippi. She even used her pleading charm. Pippi found it hard to resist for a moment, left the county office with a panicked expression. It seems that the seal left outside by the solid archbishop suddenly failed. Craven became a bit interested as well. What could cause even the seal of a 10-star archbishop to fail? So, he decided to follow and take a look. That's why I'm slacking off. I also promised to let Xianya in here. Actually, the reason Clay wanted to enter the Magic Academy at first was to find a way to break the solid archbishop's seal. Unexpectedly, Clay suddenly noticed that the solid archbishop. Otherwise, he would have to clean the animal cages. Xianya reminded Clay to focus in class. This is a prestigious institution that everyone dreams of. Clay smiled and said, I learned all of this from the elf clan. Kyle looked out the window. Someone actually gave him the answers openly. It wasn't easy to make it to the end of class. Clay immediately came out to greet Xianya and Pippi. He also thanked Xianya for the reminder. He demanded an explanation of what magical control is. If he couldn't explain it, he would have to clean the beast care farm. Kyle was somewhat flustered, because he didn't like this theoretical knowledge. Amidst the teacher's urging, and yelled loudly at Clay. Clay, suddenly awakened, was momentarily confused. Standing up and looking around. I thought it was an enemy attack. The teacher at the podium angrily reprimanded Kyle. As the head of the Magic Academy, Archbishop Shirshin was confident enough to lure Clay into his trap. Meanwhile, in the classroom of the Magic Academy, Clay was actually sleeping on the desk during class. The teacher could no longer tolerate it. Then he had the third prince write a letter to the dwarves in the name of the prince, to borrow the dragon-slaying treasure from them. Although the third prince didn't know the specifics of the plan, as long as it could cause trouble for Clay, it would be enough. He had already lived too long in the shadow of the genius Clay. The third prince shudders at the thought of that scene. If it weren't for his subordinates risking their lives to save him, I might have already died under Clay's divine punishment. At this moment, the Archbishop of the 10 Stars suddenly took out a scroll. He said we should find a way to make him go solo. And the most crucial part of it is Clay. As long as Clay disappears, the Dragon Blood family won't rise any higher. But now Clay can use level 5 magic and level 5 scrolls. Returning to the Dragon Blood family, there's no way to deal with him. Whoever becomes too powerful can be deadly for the royal family. Only by letting both sides restrain each other is the best strategy. With the king's departure, they started plotting again to deal with the Dragonblood family. At this point, someone asked, the solid princess is not beautiful. Why not favor the beautiful royal concubine? This is also a strategy in the emperor's mind. Whether it's a lion's heart or dragon's blood, the queen couldn't take it anymore. Pointing at Princess Shirshin, she angrily said this was clearly disrespectful. Moreover, Clay didn't harm her. It was already a merciful gesture. Seeing this, the king had no choice but to intervene. The solid-hearted princess sees this, and feels deep pain in her heart. She blames everything on Clay. Still whispering by the king's side, as Clay's aunt. The sword that slays dragons is actually made of the rare 9 heavens profound iron, difficult to find even in the fairy realm. Inside the palace of Stormwind City, the third prince has been expelled by the man-eating flower. He has been emitting a terrible stench. He keeps vomiting. He asked, can I enter the Magic Academy now? At this moment, the cardinal had nothing to say. He announced on the spot that Klein could enter the Magic Academy to study. However, the cardinal said that this might not be a good thing for you. I didn't expect this in the magical world. In the next moment, the third prince, foaming at the mouth, appeared before everyone. But he just fainted. I wasn't injured. Hearing this, the king also breathed a sigh of relief. Klein then expressed the Dragon Snow family's absolute loyalty to the kingdom. The archbishop replied, although you have proven your qualification to enter the Magic Academy, you must pay with the third prince's life. Kleban chuckled softly and said, this is something you admitted yourself. He then commanded, spit it out. A level 4 mage is beyond your digestion. Amid the king's anxious cries, Archbishop Shirshing immediately ordered the guards to seize Clay. Facing the swords that were now inches away, Clay showed no intention of dodging. He calmly said, isn't this a win for me? Then Clay shouted, Vine Tree 2.0. In an instant, countless vines sprang up from the ground. Suddenly, a large mouth appeared beneath the third prince's feet, trapping him firmly inside. The next moment, a carnivorous flower swallowed the third prince whole. The third prince was taken aback. He had never heard of such a thing as suppression before. Then, Clay also prepared to let the third prince experience the power of instant spellcasting. But he was, after all, of royal blood. He couldn't take his life. But what puzzled the third prince was why he couldn't cast his magic. In an instant, Clay seized the third prince's wrist. He said that because I am a level 5 mage, I have a suppressive effect on you. At the moment the third prince struck at Shining Ton, the defense was broken. The suddenly grounded third prince was somewhat confused. The next moment, Clay rushed straight towards the third prince. Seeing that the defensive Clay finally launched an attack, the third prince also prepared a defensive gesture. Using the Great Wind spell would be noticed. The third prince, a swordsman, keeps defending. He is losing his patience. He leaps high with his dual blades. Seeing this, Clay knows the opportunity has come. With both hands, he conjured weapons to attack Clay again. Although the weapons would instantly shatter upon contact with Clay's shimmer. But the third prince continues to advance while constantly remaking his weapons. Clay is currently exhausted from defending. But he can't just charge forward. Although Clay appeared to be leisurely pacing, he was actually still just a level 3 magician. To block the previous attack, his left hand was already injured. The third prince also seemed to realize that Clay was bluffing. However, the cardinal did not acknowledge it. He said that only a clear winner could be determined. He didn't believe that his sealing technique would fail. And the fourth prince saw that Clay had blocked his attack. He roared that it was impossible. Fourth level weapon magic bombards Clay wildly. But all of Clay's attacks were completely intercepted by the Shining Tongue. The audience was astonished at this, because when Clay blocked the fourth prince's seasonal magic, it indicated that he had met the requirements. It is enough for Clay. As the elemental power within Wiener moves, Clay, who has formed a contract with him, now possesses 5 minutes of the great sealing technique. Seeing Clay looking so relaxed, the third prince is furious. Clay, who originally wanted to take the opportunity to attack, had no choice but to let it go, because the third prince had buffed himself like a tiger before the start. But fortunately, Clay has external assistance. Why not use it if you can? Although Wiener's great sealing technique can only last for 5 minutes in a 3-meter diameter space, is this kid really breaking the seal of the empire? What will be the outcome of the third prince battling the genius from another world? Although Clay can cast level 5 magic, it's just a spell that obstructs vision. It doesn't cause any substantial harm to a person. He returned the favor with a level 5 spell. In an instant, the training ground was illuminated by a flash of white light. The onlookers were momentarily unable to see what was happening on the field. Clay's swift strike unleashed a level 5 spell. This left the 10-star archbishop in silence. Meanwhile, the solid archbishop looked certain of victory, gazing at the third prince who shared the same thought. At this moment, they were also filled with excitement, but the reality did not unfold as they had imagined. Clay immediately shattered the third prince's weapon. In the next moment, the third prince launched his attack. First, he used long-range magic to cover himself. Then he charged at Clay with his weapon in hand. As the two collided, the Mother of Elves felt a tightness in her chest. The king served as the referee. Knowing that Clay excels in lightning magic, the third prince immediately cast a slight earth magic barrier around himself. He also said, "This time, your lightning won't be as effective." Clay chuckled at this. Is this guy confessing without being questioned? Hearing what Klein said, the third prince is also an expert in the Book of Changes. He shouldn't have any leverage over me. How did he know that it was me that day? Then the two of them arrived at the training ground. Then the archbishop pushed the third prince out. Enemies meet, and it's especially intense. However, everyone chose not to expose it. Klein kindly advised that Xuanfa's level 3 magic is not easy to dodge. The third prince should be careful. Clay gritted his teeth and said, "No need to trouble yourself, archbishop. I have long since reached level 4 magician." Upon hearing this, the solid archbishop immediately stated that Clay was lying. Klein suggested that if they didn't believe it, they could find a level 4 magician to have a duel. Then Clay expressed his desire to enter a magic school to learn real magic. At this point, the solid archbishop stepped forward and said it was truly a pity. Your talent has been sealed. Now you can only use level 3 magic. You cannot enter the magic academy. Clay entered the banquet hall. He saw the king and the archbishop of the realms. The king greeted Clay warmly. As was proper etiquette, Clay returned the greeting. He rolls up his sleeves and gets ready to work hard. And he tells Wiener to prepare his great sealing technique. Maybe it will come in handy later. Wiener immediately agreed. Then, teaching others is more like it. Mother also understands Clay's feelings, but this decision was also agreed upon by the kingdom. Now the king is here to appease the Longxue family. Clay doesn't care about all that. You can only enter the alchemy academy. Clay was shocked upon hearing this. He had worked hard to return, just to enter the magic academy, and then break through that damn magic seal using alchemy. I still need others to teach me. Clyde, however, did not understand what that had to do with him. Mother said angrily that entering the magic academy requires an assessment. Right now, you can only use level 3 magic, but the admission standard is level 4 magic. Therefore, yet even so, only Clyde was allowed inside. Poor Pip was still left outside. Then the mother told Clyde that something big had happened. The solid archbishop had separated the alchemy academy from the magic school. Clay and Pippi exchanged awkward glances. Vina, who was watching the scene, was already laughing uncontrollably. Clay immediately shouted, "This is my home." Then the mother elf hurried over, following the sound. She scolded the careless guard without hesitation. "Come back to see him when you have time." Then Clay and Pippi teleported back to Stormwind. But they were stopped by the guards in front of their own door. They even said that no outsiders or dogs were allowed inside. With great confidence, she said that from now on, she would take care of him. The next moment, a guard rushed over and said that the princess was urging Prince Clay to return quickly. Clay felt a bit awkward. He had completely forgotten that Garihai had prepared a welcome banquet for him. Even his grandmother was urging him to hurry back. I think Grandma knows about this as well. Everyone is just tacitly aware. In order to prove how capable she was, Wina told Clay that she could perform great sealing spells. The throne can be given to my sister. I just want to have candy. Although Vena herself is not interested in the throne, when that day comes, it will definitely bring a bloody storm. Why follow me instead? Is that really okay? Vena replied, it's fine. Vena replied, it's fine. Anyway, there's still my sister. Yet now, he's stopped by 2 guards. It even said, no idlers or dogs allowed. Clay received the Elven Queen's reward, and returned to the Elven city with his grandmother. Clay said to Vena, you have a perfectly good throne. As the Queen's words fell, a surge of immense power flooded into Clay's body. A great figure of the immortal realm was reborn in another world, becoming a genius praised by all. He even tamed a level 9 magic beast as a pet, and injected it into Clay's body. Then, with supreme magical power, the Queen declared that from today on, the elemental spirit Princess Vena would be the of Clay's dragon blood. The spirit contract is established. Till death do us part. Perhaps everything is destined in the dark. After a struggle of thoughts, the Queen agreed to Clay's request. She also prepared a surprise for the two. In the next moment, the Queen suddenly drew a drop of blood from Vena. The Queen sighed at that moment. She thought to herself, a girl is hard to keep. However, Vena's birth centuries ago caused the moonwell to run dry. Now the person who awakens the moonwell is going to take Vena away. Immediately spoke up to stop her. After all, Vena is a candidate for the future throne. The Queen did not immediately refuse. Instead, she asked Vena for her wishes. And of course, Vena was very willing to go with Clay to the human world. Any elemental elf will do. The next moment, Clay pointed to Vena, who was beside the Elf Queen. If it were me, I'd choose the Queen. After all, she said any elf would be fine. Clay's grandmother, hearing her choice. Clay could also feel their immense power. Their strength was even shaking Clay's very soul. But Clay didn't make a decision right away. Instead, he asked the Queen, can I follow my heart in making this choice? The Queen smiled and said, of course you can. At this moment, Grandma was moved to tears. But Clay had a look of disbelief. Something so amazing was actually used for inducing labor. Then the Queen summoned the 3 most outstanding elven warriors in the clan. She asked Clay to choose one to form a contract with. New spirits will continuously be born in the future. The Queen was overjoyed at the sight. The light of the elemental god once again shone upon the land. All the elemental spirits raised their hands. Jarvan shouted the names of the elemental god and the spirit queen. As the Queen cast her spell, the divine artifact gradually soared into the sky. In the next moment, a beam of moonlight shot down. The artifact is completely wrapped up. This also signifies the completion of the ritual. The resurrection ceremony was completed. With a wave of her hand, the Queen shed her black robe. Such a stunning face made the dark night seem to pale. Clay also hesitated and gasped in awe. She urged Clay not to underestimate herself, and the two of them exchanged words back and forth, arguing with great enthusiasm. All of this was witnessed by the Queen. Soon, they arrived at the moonwell. She whispered, choose me when you select a contract spirit. That way, I can go to the human world. Clay looked disdainfully and said, you don't seem very strong either. Why should I learn from you? Vena was so angry that she kicked her legs, and Clay still wanted the reward promised by the Empress, to contract with an elemental spirit. The Empress gladly agreed, but it had to be after the resurrection ceremony. However, Vena quietly approached Clay, and in an instant appeared before Clay. All he wanted was a reward for completing the mission, the loyalty of 10,000 elven warriors for 10 years. As the Empress finished speaking, the ceremony is complete, and handed the artifact to the Queen. Gazing at the blessing of the magic god in her hands, the Empress expressed her heartfelt gratitude to Clay. Clay also said it was his honor. Suddenly, the Empress disappeared from the throne in a flash, and so, they set off together towards the Elf Queen's palace. Along the way, Clay was still a bit fearful. He hadn't expected that even a shield crafted by an 8th-level magical beast couldn't withstand the power of the elemental elves. It seems the Queen's previous reward was truly valuable. Soon, they arrived at the palace. The grandmother was somewhat surprised at this. She asked the princess if the Queen knew she had run out. Who would have thought that this carefree and somewhat silly fairy was actually a high and mighty princess? Afterward, she said that only her mother was strict with her. Her sister didn't care about her. As the little fairy grew more fond of the human world, the grandmother walked over to Clay, grumbling. She thought he was in danger. Clay explained that it was indeed very dangerous earlier. Fortunately, Princess Vena stopped them in time. What he saw was a scene of harmony and friendship. Nearby, a little fairy was patting its round belly, and let out a big burp. Even bragging to the guard, wasn't it delicious? And the guard, with tears in his eyes, tearfully agreed. After the sprite mother and the sprite grandmother, the third beautiful sprite queen from Jing County heard the battle happening in the distance. Then hurriedly rushed over, fearing that Klee had been injured by the elemental guards. But when he arrived, he was also ready to take action. The blazing lion appeared within the shield. At that moment, the little sprite hurriedly urged them to stop. Upon hearing this, Klee halted his attack, but the sprite guardians did not stop. As Klee was busy defending, he also made it clear that he wasn't an intruder. However, the elven guards had never seen Klee's magic before, so they mistook him for an intruder. Klee found it hard to explain things to them. At that moment, Klee also noticed the presence rushing in from behind. In an instant, he pulled out the level 8 magical beast shield, and the ones attacking Klee were the elven guards. Although the shield was crafted from the magic core of a level 8 magical beast, it was struggling to withstand the magical impact from the elven guards. Klee advised him to take his time. There's still plenty left. Suddenly, it seemed the little sprite was eating too quickly, and accidentally choked. With a mouthful, it shouted, "Watch out, sprite guards!" Immediately fired back. But the next moment, seeing the honey Klee pulled out, he instantly became captivated by it. All previous unpleasantness had long been forgotten. Seeing him enjoying his meal so much, "Damn it, didn't they say everything golden yellow is honey?" Klee saw his clueless expression, and couldn't help but speak up. "Not everything golden yellow is honey." The elf, hearing Klee mock him, because what he just mentioned was pine resin, not honey, the little sprite angrily retorted to Klee, "I know exactly what honey is like." Then it took out a book and started looking at it. In an instant, they swept past Grandma. Grandma watched as the forest guardians left. "I thought, could something have happened to Klee? The reason this little sprite is trapped is to find honey to eat." Klee couldn't help but laugh at this. Then Klee followed the sound and came to a large tree. He discovered an elf whose entire body was stuck, so he used magic to free him. Meanwhile, Grandma was still searching everywhere for Klee. Suddenly, the forest guardians sensed a magic that didn't belong here. Seeing this, his grandmother shouted for Klein to come back. If he runs around and encounters the elven guards, it will be trouble. In contrast, Klein had already run far away. And the reason he could hear the call for help that even his grandmother could not perceive, it's because he has an incredibly powerful divine will from his past life. His grandmother asked what was wrong. Klein hurriedly said it seemed someone was calling for help. However, his grandmother, as one of the top powerhouses on the mainland, did not hear anyone calling for help. But Klein was sure that what he heard just now was not an illusion. He then ran off on his own. But didn't the Empress say the power was running out? How terrifying must the magical elements have been at their peak? As Klee and his grandmother were expressing their amazement, he suddenly received a distress signal from someone. Seeing Klee stop. Afterward, the two traveled through a magic formation to the Elf Queen's domain. Grandmother reminded them not to wander off. If they encountered unfamiliar elf guards, they'd be in for trouble. Klee readily agreed. Then he noticed that the magical elements here were so dense that they had materialized. Wang looked at the divine artifact in his hand, just as incredulous as his mother. At this moment, Keeley, like a businessman, began negotiating terms with his own grandmother. After all, even close brothers should settle accounts clearly. Grandmother didn't say anything, because the elf queen would certainly keep her promise. Then the queen rushed up to Klee in one swift motion. Faced with such an enthusiastic grandmother, Klee was momentarily at a loss. He directly stated his purpose. He had found the artifact, the blessing of the magic goddess, and the newcomer landed precisely on him. The visitors were Klee and Pippi. The elven queen looked at her grandson who had returned. This made her stop crying. After all, she had just been weeping because she couldn't bear to see Klee leave. That made one of the 5 great powers, the elf queen, cry inconsolably in public. Just as the guards were struggling to comfort the queen, a teleportation circle suddenly appeared in the palace. But the guards didn't even have time to warn about an enemy attack, before a giant beast had already arrived silently. He also had a helpless expression. He promised to refine 500 pills afterward. Let him have enough in one go. Hearing such a generous offer, Pippi immediately opened the portal back to the elven clan. What on earth happened? Then Klee asked Pippi to find a place with no one around. Open the portal to return to the Jingling clan. Pippi complained that this consumes a lot of magical liquid. You can't do it without at least 100 or 80 earth spirit pills. Klein looked at Pippi, who was haggling. However, Klee suddenly jumped out of the carriage. He said he had a way. Then Klee called out loudly to the sky. With a roar, Pippi landed steadily in front of Klee. Then, Klee took the artifact, and wanted to head straight to the elven tribe, to hand it over to the elven queen in exchange for a reward. But Mother was a bit worried. After all, this place is very far from the elf tribe. We share the same ancestry. He then returned the sealing talisman of the level 9 magical beast to Xienya, and promised that he would definitely protect it well. So, this matter was happily decided. But she couldn't give Xienya an official status. Because of the kingdom's strict class system, it is extremely rigid. However, Clay took out the previous legal token, and said that Xienya is a descendant of Gaddafi. Looking at the heartbroken Xienya in front of him, Clay silently made up his mind. I have to protect her, and I told my mother to treat Xienya as my own sister. My mother, of course, had no objections. Then Clay followed his mother and came to Xienya. Looking at Xienya, who was trembling and sobbing uncontrollably, Clay asked his mother what had happened. She said the child's mother had just passed away. We were still a step too late. For a moment, she couldn't believe it was real. Clay said it was all thanks to Xienya. He then asked where he was, but his mother suddenly changed from her earlier excitement. He even said somewhat dejectedly that the girl is not doing well now. Then she asked him who sent the group that attacked him. Clay said that the mastermind behind the scenes escaped. He also told his mother about obtaining the artifact. As the mother of the elven race, she stared at the artifact in her hand, so shocked that her mouth couldn't close. Could it be that someone is pulling the strings from the shadows? Before long, Clay heard his mother's call. She greeted him. His mother rushed to him, out of breath. She gave him a half-hearted scolding. After that, Clay exited the divine stone space. He also obtained the elven divine artifact. Looking at the divine artifact in his hand, Clay could hardly believe it. Something that had disappeared for hundreds of years was found by him like this. Then, Clay immediately drove Jean Lien to the side of the divine artifact. He gripped the staff tightly with both hands. As the spiritual energy within him surged, he swiftly pulled out the divine artifact. Before leaving, he didn't forget to greet the fire phoenix, the blessing of the gods. At this moment, all Clay needed to do was find a way to retrieve the artifact. Then he picked up a stone and used the simplest diversion tactic to distract the fire phoenix. What stood before him was a fully grown level 9 high-rank beast. With Clay's current strength, confronting it would only lead to death. But he found that the fire phoenix seemed to be bound by something. Upon closer inspection, what trapped the fire phoenix was the magical artifact that the elves had searched for hundreds of years. And here, it felt as scorching and unbearable as a magma-filled hell. Suddenly, he sensed a massive surge of energy. Looking abruptly, a level 9 high captain beast, the fire phoenix, was circling in the sky. And this was no juvenile like Pippi. It would be a piece of cake. After all, even though Klein had lost his cultivation from his past life, his mental strength remained intact along with his memories. As Klein's divine sense awakened, he entered the Farpai territory. It emits an astonishing magical power from within. Klein was also curious and wanted to take a look. If he used the magic of this world to enter, with Klein's current strength, it would be impossible. But if he used his divine sense to explore, little did they know, the two of them suddenly teleported away. Fortunately, they found Shenya's package. Then, Clay found it in the package. This is the summoning talisman of the Gaddafi family, which is inherited from the dragon blood family. Although it seems ordinary on the surface, what on earth is it? That made the beautiful elf mother cry out Hoselii? Clay is searching desperately for the thunderclap. The two who were hiding behind the rocks were thinking about going to see who was causing trouble behind them. Clay also noticed the two hiding at this moment. Then, the most familiar Daoist technique, the Longstar Thunder, returned. As a sudden thunderclap echoed across the sky, a bolt of lightning, filled with destructive energy, struck the ground. And hiding behind the rocks, the third prince and the armored general escaped disaster. The third prince looked at Clay's unmatched form, feeling even more indignant inside. Why is he still so powerful even when sealed? What the hell, is this a kid? At this moment, Clay started showing off. Next time, don't accept any elementary school student's orders. As Clay's intention was activated, countless soldiers were instantly engulfed in flames. And just now, the soldier was the first to strike at Clay. Fortunately, Clay didn't waste any time. The writer used a level 5 alchemical secret treasure element scroll. What followed was a combination of level 5 military magic and level 5 fire magic. Even the fire serpent knights were cursing. Seeing his convincing act was exposed, he dropped the act. He immediately drew his sword against Clay. Clay stared at the overwhelming number of knights, couldn't help but exclaim, "This is truly impressive." At this moment, Clay arrived, following the black dog. But when he saw the large group of soldiers, he didn't panic. The leading soldier even proudly said, "We are bandits." Clay couldn't help but retort, "Have you ever seen bandits wearing armor? Fool." Then a soldier rushed over to report that Clay had been found. The third prince smirked wickedly at the news. He ordered his men to proceed as planned, make it look like he was attacked by bandits, and make sure not to leave any evidence. Then, a general clad in golden armor questioned whether it was really necessary to be so cautious when dealing with a child. He suggested sending more people would solve the problem. The third prince instantly flew into a rage upon hearing this. He shouted that all he wanted was Clay dead. He didn't want to start a war with the Longxue family. Seeing this, Ryan immediately told Sienna to find her elven mother, while she chased after the direction from earlier. Little did she know that the strange cat was actually working for the fifth prince, and its goal was to lure Ryan into an ambush in the canyon to kill her. Without saying a word, it started attacking Xienya, but the strike didn't harm her. Instead, it knocked the heirloom out of her hand. Then the strange cat quickly fled the scene, carrying Xienya's heirloom. The rescued little girl quickly introduced herself as Xienya. She was preparing to sell her family heirloom to pay for her mother's medical treatment. Ryan generously offered that his team had excellent doctors who could help him. Just as Xienya was about to thank Ryan, a large black cat suddenly appeared in front of them. The two thugs were instantly terrified. At that moment, the little girl sitting on the ground caught Ryan's attention. At first glance, she looked strikingly similar to Sienna, the love of his previous life. But after probing with his spiritual power, he was greatly disappointed. It was just a resemblance, nothing more. But the girl was robbed of her family heirloom by some thugs because she owed 30 cents. Ryan, who happened to be passing by, immediately stepped in to stop them. But unexpectedly, he was met with ruthless mockery from the two thugs. Just as they were about to attack Ryan, the giant bear peel let out a furious roar. However, she still told Ryan that he could become the greatest alchemist. He even said he'd teach him the elven race's top-tier alchemy. Then, he took Ryan to the elven library. But at that moment, a mysterious time array in the center of the library caught Ryan's curiosity. A 6-year-old boy ended up with a 5-year-old fiancée. Seeing this, Pierre couldn't help but complain that Ryan can even flirt with dragons. After saying goodbye to the dragon, they immediately returned to the room. At this time, the queen grandmother who was looking for them just happened to arrive here. However, she brought some bad news. The seal on Ryan cannot even be broken by the elemental empress. Feeling her strength noticeably increase, Tina immediately gave Ryan a token of appreciation. It was a dragon scale infused with her magical power. In the future, if Ryan encounters difficulties, just crush him. Tina will rush over to help immediately. Only then was I exiled by the dragon clan of Dragon Island and ended up here. Upon learning who Tina is, Ryan slowly reached for his pocket. He took out a deep blue spirit pill. It was said to enhance Tina's strength. The giant dragon that had just absorbed the spirit pill let out a roar. The dragon, seeing his old friend Pierre, didn't seem overly cautious. Meanwhile, Ryan remained completely calm and greeted the dragon. He then curiously asked the dragon why it lived in this frigid place. The dragon before them was named Tina, and she had lost her shelter after her parents passed away. Behind Pierre, the space-time portal also appeared, but after passing through the magic gate, they unexpectedly arrived in a land of ice and snow. When Pierre brought Ryan into a cave, he was so shocked by the scene before him that he couldn't speak. Before him stood a massive blue dragon, towering at least 5 stories high. Then, Ryan slowly took out a yellowish-brown pill. He proudly said it was an earth spirit pill, perfectly suited to Pierre's element. It can temporarily boost Pierre's level. Immediately after, Pierre excitedly swallowed the pill. In an instant, a powerful burst of earth energy erupted. In fact, he has seen it himself, because it was magic released by one of Pierre's dragon friends. Upon hearing this, Ryan excitedly asked Pierre to take him to see the dragon. But Pierre sadly responded that his current abilities are not enough to open a time-space portal. We can only wait until we're stronger to see it again. But the Transcendent Queen. But it can unleash the power of a level 15 spell. After saying that, he had Ryan's mother take him to rest first. Back in the room, Ryan couldn't help but curiously ask Pierre if there really exists magic of the Emperor level. Pierre calmly replied that of course it exists. He can only rely on 5-year-old Ryan to break through with his own abilities. So he can only comfort Ryan in front of him. Although the Elf Queen cannot lift the seal on him, perhaps the Elemental Queen, who possesses even more powerful magic, can do so, because ordinary people can at most unleash level 12 magic, and his mother looked even younger, appearing only 17. This was because Ryan was a descendant of both elves and humans. Yet at that moment, the Elven Queen let out a furious cry, because his grandson Ryan was not only sealed of his magic by the High Priest of Human Enlightenment, but this malicious prohibition cannot be undone through external means. But just as Ryan reached the entrance of the kingdom, he saw a woman slowly approaching from the sky. This woman, with her unparalleled beauty, turned out to be Ryan's grandmother, the Queen of the Elves. It was astonishing that a boy of his age had a 20-year-old grandmother. A sword of elements and an alchemy notebook suddenly sprang out. It was obvious that this ring belonged to the same type as his mother's space ring. Ryan, who was lacking books for learning, had now obtained the coveted alchemy. As his mother's material gathering came to an end, everyone continued their journey towards the Elven Kingdom. They were taken by Grey Bear Pier to the Hydra's lair. However, Ryan was not interested in the piles of gold at all. Instead, he went straight to a skeleton of a human. Clearly, the rings on this person are the real treasure. Just as Ryan picked up the ring from the child's hand, she also mentioned that the remains were very large. They needed to bring more people in carts. But her mother revealed the spatial ring in her hand. She assured her not to worry about the snakes. After the group arrived at the location and finished collecting the remains, it had shrunk to the size of a doll. Seeing Ryan, his worried parents didn't blame him. They were more curious about the seemingly weak gray bear in his arms. But Ryan lied and claimed he had accidentally found the Hydra's corpse. She asked her mother to take people to collect materials for alchemy. It blocked a blow from the Hydra at the same time. A powerful beam erupted from its mouth. With just one strike, it killed the Hydra in front of it. It then kept its promise and submitted at Ryan's feet. When Ryan brought the giant bear back, then Ryan took advantage of the moment when the two beasts were still fighting. He pulled out a bottle of golden potion and scattered it. As soon as the potion landed on the grizzly bear, it suddenly burst with immense energy. A layer of golden armor condensed on its body. So he offers to help the bear win the battle. But the condition is that it must submit to him afterwards. Clearly, the giant bear does not believe the words of this little brat. But now it's already a matter of life and death. I could only accept Ryan's help with a hopeful attitude. Ahead, a 9-headed giant serpent is fighting a gray bear. But the giant bear, which should easily handle the 9-headed snake, is now covered in wounds. Ryan stands by, unafraid, mocking the giant bear. He knows that since the bear is still in its juvenile stage, it clearly can't unleash its abilities and is no match for the 9-headed snake. So, the group immediately changed their route. They diverted to a nearby town to rest. But late at night, when all was quiet, Ryan was still curious about the scene from the day. So, he secretly snuck out of his room under the cover of night. Stepping on the infinite golden lotus formed from the divine stone, he arrived at the battleground of the magical beasts from earlier. Immediately, a scene appeared in the crystal ball in his hand. Seeing this, Grandpa began to marvel at Ryan's magical talent. At this moment, the image inside the crystal ball turned into a blaze of fire. The mother immediately realized that a fierce battle was taking place ahead. It seemed to be a war between magical beasts of at least level 7 or higher, that prevent mutual slaughter. Those from the Pang family cannot escape this disaster. However, Ryan paid no attention to this. He silently cast a spell on the radar in his hand. Then he released it into the air. They also gave Ryan a sparrow named Radar as a gift. But as soon as he got in the car, he noticed something was off with his grandfather. His face was filled with an unmistakable killing intent. It turned out he had already arranged a massacre for the Shurji family, although several major families have blood pacts, preparing to depart for the Elven Kingdom. However, Ryan still insisted that the king restore the status of the illegitimate daughter princess. Because of this, when they set off the next day, the two sisters hurried over to say goodbye. It must be broken from within. Even Bishop Karsa couldn't do anything now. However, he then mentioned that perhaps the foreign elf queen of Ryan could have a way to break the seal. Upon hearing this, the mother finally showed a look of relief. She immediately arranged the journey. Seeing this, his mother beside the bed questioned Karatsi's. It was supposed to be just a simple seal. Why did such a dangerous situation arise? They roared, demanding Ryan's seal be lifted immediately. But Karatsi's replied that once the seal was completed, suddenly, the magic within him surged forth. By the end of it, the shackles on his body had completely vanished. But because his body and magic were too weak, the seal within him only expelled a small part. His mother was anxiously watching Ryan at this time, but what he didn't know was that the soul within Ryan, Zhang Daoling, had already begun to break free from the shackles. Suddenly, he opened his eyes wide, gritting his teeth. The king actually ordered the sealing of Ryan's magic, but the one performing the ritual was Kazak, who had always harbored resentment against him. When Ryan was sent home, he was already unconscious. His body was still wrapped in magical chains. Only his mother showed a worried expression. It turned out that during the previous rescue, Ryan had unleashed a powerful magical force. This unexpectedly injured Prince Number 5. To prevent the magic within him from overflowing again, now unexpectedly reborn, he saved the king's two illegitimate daughters. But instead of being rewarded, he was chained for 364 days. Even his father was indifferent to his safety at this moment. Who was sealing him? It's Archbishop Kassa of the Light Doctrine, once the strongest cultivator about to ascend to godhood, but was tragically framed and trapped in the netherworld for 300 years, instead caused Ryan to feel a sharp pain. Then the priest beside him waved his hand. Several powerful dark energies enveloped Ryan, causing him unbearable agony. At that moment, Ryan suddenly realized. This reassured his mother, but when Ryan arrived at the palace altar, he still couldn't help but show a worried expression. He was still lying on the altar. What should have been a simple magical sealing ritual, but to prevent such incidents from happening again, the king actually wants to seal Ryan's magic. Upon hearing this, his mother strongly opposed it. However, the Archmage Kara and his father both agreed that the magic seal would automatically lift later. After all, status and identity still matter. Upon learning that only a retainer had been dealt with, Ryan set aside his worries. But at that moment, his father brought bad news. Although the prince was not seriously harmed, and Ryan also collapsed due to excessive magical power consumption. However, after being saved by his mother and brought home, Ryan was questioned about how he could master such advanced magic. Yet he was worried and asked about the prince's safety. But in the next second, vines ensnared a nearby attendant. Immediately following, a furious roar erupted with several bolts of lightning. They electrocuted two of the attendants. He forcefully threw Ryan, but Ryan landed on the ground unharmed. Facing the unrepentant fifth prince, Ryan had no choice but to unleash his magic. Countless vines sprang out from around him. At this moment, the fifth prince still believes that his identity can intimidate Ryan. It turned out that the two daughters of the king and a court lady were being bullied. The perpetrator was none other than the fifth prince, a notorious playboy in the palace. Although Ryan loudly stopped their actions, the fifth prince sneered at Ryan with disdain. He even started to attack Ryan, relying on his status as a prince. This caught Kasa's attention on the infant Zhang Daoling. Immediately, with a loud shout from his father, Zhang Daoling received another name in this world, Ryan Dragonblood. Thus, Zhang Daoling lived a stable life for 3 years with his new name. Today, he was playing in the royal garden as usual. Suddenly, the sounds of an argument behind him caught his attention. In recent years, the other 5 major families had successively trained magicians, putting them under immense pressure. But now, the birth of Zhang Daoling undoubtedly brought hope for the family's resurgence. This news also reached Bishop Kasa and the actual princess. During today's naming ceremony, Bishop Kasa discovered an unusual power radiating from Zhang Daoling. But the fairy princess beside him spoke, saying that the magic within the child was very powerful. He would definitely become a great magician in the future. Upon hearing this, even the man's father revealed an excited smile. Although their dragon blood family had guarded the borders and won every battle, they were merely struggling to hold on with tactics and martial skills. The man finally showed a relieved smile. He then looked at the baby still in swaddling clothes. Facing the frail Zhang Daoling before him, the man couldn't help but worry if he could become a strong knight. Suddenly, a loud crashing sound startled everyone. They saw a man anxiously rushing to the bedside. He worriedly inquired about the elven princess's condition. He was Zhang Daoling's human father. Seeing that his wife was fine, he could only see his mother, weak from a difficult childbirth, closing her eyes. Her vitality was even starting to gradually fade away. Then, Zhang Daoling simply pointed with his small hand. Countless streams of spiritual energy began to surge into his mother's body. In an instant, he pulled her back from the brink of danger. Zhang Daoling's physical body also began to gradually dissipate. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself looking at a woman with green hair and long ears, and he had turned into an infant. Realizing that he had been reborn, Zhang Daoling hadn't yet had the chance to see his surroundings clearly. At that moment, however, his disciple Xiang'er unexpectedly arrived on the scene. He forcibly activated the divine stone with his own primordial spirit, just to protect the life of the world-honored one, Zhang Daoling, but the bright moon still engulfed them. Seeing both of them fall into a coma, they set up the immortal execution and soul extinction array to trap and seize it. But just as he was about to perish, he chose to burn his primordial spirit, activating endless fame. Intending to perish together with the so-called righteous cultivators, the boy's father thought that his union with the elf had resulted in powerful genes. Little did he know, his son was the reincarnation of Zhang Daoling, the great celestial master. Zhang Tianshi, who should have ascended to godhood, was envied by the great cultivators of the heavens because he possessed an ancient divine stone. The elf princess was pregnant for 3 years, and gave birth to a human baby boy. The newborn could speak right after being born, and even pointed his finger to save his mother, who was dying from childbirth complications. Faced with this miraculous scene,